Nice background, Aniket.
Thanks, man.
Very cursed.
Nah, that's some blurst quality. I like that one.
When we first set up Zoom, I had one of these things going and just owned everyone in the entire shoot.
Very nice. Does it have background noise? Is that what that was?
No, this one doesn't. But the one I did before did. That was like a YouTube clip full screen. Like it took charge of the entire, because I didn't lock out the
Oh, nice.
Hey, everyone. Sorry, I had trouble starting Zoom. I thought I was going to be clever and stay in the last meeting, but actually my cleverness outwitted me. Chris, how did you go at the last one? How did it end up?
I think after about 4 o'clock, it was mostly banter. So I'm not sure how much of the recording will be uploaded, but I think it was a good set of questions. We did go through a little bit of content, and hopefully we answered and prepped a few people for the exam. And those of you who still have questions, please fire away at me or Kath, who I believe is in here, if you have technical questions after Richard has done talking, whenever that may be.
That will never happen, will it? I'm just being amazed at Aniket's background. Do I pronounce it?
Yeah, that's right.
Called out by the man.
Good. That's fantastic. So there's, I guess, 2 things to do. One is just to revise anything that anyone, oh, hi guys, hi Gary. One's to revise anything that needs to be revised. So just answer any questions about course content. And the other one's to talk about the exam. And they're sort of interlinked, because I imagine a lot of things you want revised are things that will be in the exam and so on and so on. And probably because the exam's the most stressful thing, maybe we should start talking about the exam first. What do you guys think about that? And just answer any questions about that. And then after that, we can revise any topics that anyone wants revised, or answer any questions about anything that we're able to answer. Does that sound good? So I can see nods and thumbs up as I'm going, so that's good. Thank you. That feedback's fantastic. So let me go through my description of how I think it's all going to go, which might hopefully address a lot of questions. And then why don't you ask questions to clean up the gaps and bits that are confusing or contradictory or so on. Oh, and the other thing to say is that I think Lisa sent around the link to the survey. Have you done that, Lisa? I think I saw that, unless I'm having a brain freeze.
We got a link to a survey.
Wonderful. Oh, well, don't click on it. You go straight to Aniket's screen. So there's the normal My Experience survey, which is really good to fill in, especially now because everything's so different this year. Nice to tell you. Did you just shout at me? Like, what have I done? Lisa. I think she was, were you murdered? Was that a horrible scene happening there? It flashed up and then disappeared. I don't know what happened, but I can only think terrible things. I'm just going to, what Lisa, tell us.
No, I beg your pardon. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
My mute and not mute.
Oh, yeah. No, that's fine. I was just having fun. So surveys, there's, My Experience, everyone should do that. I reckon you should always do that. And the uni looks at it a bit. And it is certainly true that some teachers look at it a lot. But at the moment, it's really good because everyone's wondering about how things have gone and what it's actually like for you guys. So if you can tell them that in the survey, that would be fantastic. Number 2 is the survey we run. We always run one. It's not supposed to replace My Experience. Do My Experience as well. The stats on My Experience is no one ever does it, or hardly anyone ever does it. I think the completion rate's 10% or 20% or something. So you just get the people who are angry or have a particular point of view to push. And it's still interesting to hear from all those people, or people that are really happy. But, I think it's good to hear from everyone. So we normally try and get close to 100% response rate by doing a pen and paper survey to everyone in the course, which we look at as well as in My Experience, not dissing My Experience. It's great. You should do it. But please do our one, because that's fantastic. And we look at that really intently and think about it heaps. And we change the course each time in accordance with the data we get back from that. Also, as the next course approaches, we'll ask people for a post-mortem we'll announce on this course, and anyone that wants to can turn up. And I think, I don't know if anyone that's here now came to the last one other than the tutors, but we got a good turnout to the last one and lots of good ideas from people about how it went, and it fundamentally changed how we ran it this time. And we do that each time. So that's incredibly useful to us. We obsess about it. Lisa will probably tell you we spend quite a long time looking at it and thinking about it. We form our own opinions in lots of other ways, but we really want to know how to make the course better. So please fill in that survey and tell us how to make the course better. Also, it's your chance to brag about how good your tutor was. And that helps us when we, it helps us select new tutors, but it's not just that. It also, we slightly sanitize the feedback if it's offensive. and pass it on to the tutors so they can improve their teaching. Well, at least that's the intent. I can't remember if we actually did that last year, but certainly that was our intent. And some tutors are super keen to get it back so they can improve their teaching. And we ask your suggestions for how to make the course better, and that's where all the brilliant ideas for the course always come from. So please fill in that in. That's fantastic. Now, enough about that. And unless anyone's got a question about the surveys, I'll pause. Shall I? Anyone want to say anything? Or ask a question about surveys?
Should we name tutors in our feedback then, if you're going to pass it on?
Yeah. You go and look at the form. It's just an online, I assume it's SurveyMonkey. Is that how we set it up, Lisa?
I think it's a Google form. At least that's what the link is.
Yeah, I'm filling it in now. It's Google form.
Oh, thanks. Now you've told me that, I'll get metadata on who you are.
No, we won't. We're not going to do that.
I won't submit it.
Submit it. Don't. When I say fill in the surveys, yeah, I mean, let me be really clear. If you click that submit button, you're crazy, but fill them in. Yeah, so that's the thing I was going to say. We actually make, not only is it anonymous as far as we're concerned, we make no effort to unanonymize it. I guess that's possible. There's a spot on it where you can put your name if you want, because you might want us to contact you or ask further questions or do anything like that. So you can identify yourself if you want, but you don't have to. And because of the possibility of you identifying yourself, we don't look at anything until after all the marks have been finalized and everything's been processed and the period for appeals and everything's passed. So there can be no bias. Just if you really wanted to slag me, I actually really want you to, but of course you'll be reluctant to until, well, we have power over you. So, so please do it. But we won't look at it all till afterwards. And anything you want to be anonymous, just say you want it to be, just write anything you want and say, my tutor was good or bad, and I don't want you to tell me, just say anything, we'll respect it, because the data is so precious to us, that, and privacy, we're obsessed with. But if you don't mind giving your name, and you don't mind naming your tutor, then that's really useful, because then we can give them specific and constructive feedback, and they really love that. So yeah, do it if you can, but if you can't, don't. And of course, be utterly honest. Yeah, that was a good question. Thanks, Laura. Anything else from anyone? All right, so let's move on to the exam. So we're still writing the exam at the moment. Oh, hi, Shannon. We're still writing the exam at the moment. For me, it's an erosion process. It's like creating a sculpture, like a statue. You remove things to get to the statue. So I have a ridiculous number of questions on cards. On cards, I can't. Well, can I show you the cards? I can't, because you'll see the questions. Oh, I'll show you a blank card. Where's the blank card? On cards that look like this, red cards. I've got an enormous, like a shuffled deck of them. And every time I think of a good question, I put it on a card and I write the topic on top in big letters. And now I've got a very silly number of cards, and I've spent yesterday and today going through the cards, just winnowing them down. And I've nearly got the right number of questions, but then I'll have to get them in the right order, and then I'll write them out. And then I get past students and various people to look over it and sanity check it and make sure it's clear. And often they'll come back and say that question's stupid and that's too hard and confusing and so on. So it'll still get whittled down, but we should have the final exam ready sort of mid next week. And as soon as it's ready, I'll make something called a skeleton exam, which is I write the exam out and then I essentially obfuscate all the questions. So as much as possible, they look like the actual questions. I think you can probably see last year's skeleton exam. I might or might not have released it, but if you want to know what it's, why would you want to know what a skeleton exam is? Just, I will release one mid next week and then you'll know. And it's essentially all the exam questions with some of the words changed, but you can read through it and see what the exam looks like, how long it is, how many marks everything is. And sometimes I leave enough words in that you get the sense that, oh, there'll be a question on this sort of thing and a question on that sort of thing. hopefully it's just a reassuring exercise. So when you open the final exam on exam day, there shouldn't be any surprises except the precise wording of the questions. You shouldn't have to read all the exam instructions and details and things like that, because hopefully you've done all that long in advance, and it's just straightforward. So that's the skeleton, and that'll come out as soon as the exam's ready, and my aim for that is the middle of next week. In terms of the sample exam, there's an old exam up at the moment, and maybe we can go over that and look at any questions people want to ask about. That's to give you a feel for what the exam would look like. But of course, you know, every year things are different. We talk about different things. So some of those questions you probably won't be able to answer, or they're on topics that we haven't covered in much detail this year. And then some topics we've covered in lots of detail this year aren't in that. So it's a sample exam to give you a feel for what the exam looks like. It's not necessarily something you could just sit down and do a practice and then you've done the whole course and you can relax. Because we're working at home, I think we've talked about all this before, but let me just say it again briefly now. Because you're going to be doing the exam at home and we completely trust you, and that's a deliberate strategy on our part. In fact, I've been in discussions with other people in the uni about our general approach to exams over the last couple of weeks. And even today, I was having a discussion with someone about it. And some unis have gone down this line of very intensive proctoring. So, you know, putting cameras in your house and various things to check up on you and things like that. And I cannot express how against that form of education I am. And I'm really proud that UNSW largely has avoided that, and certainly is not adopting it as a matter of principle, though there are a few faculties that have slipped a few in like that. But the idea being that you're adults and we're all doing this together, and we should sort of treat you like adults, knowing, of course, that you still wouldn't leave a big pile of money sitting on Bondi Beach surrounded by adults, because you know, it's hard to resist temptation, and sometimes you're under lots of pressures, and it's not right of us to put you in a position where you might be tempted to do not the right thing. That's a horrible thing to do. So hopefully we're not putting you in temptation's way, but I am hoping everyone will just be honest in assuming it, because, you know, at the end of the day, well, you're only getting a pass or a fail. I'm assuming everyone's going to get a pass. So I don't even know why you're doing the exam, but it's lovely to have you there, and I hope you enjoy doing it. It is quite fun, hopefully, the exam. So how the exam will work was we'll send you a copy of the exam encrypted at least the day before the exam, probably the day before the exam. And we'll give you, when we release the skeleton. Oh, actually this weekend, I think, Saturday morning, we're releasing a sample encrypted exam. So you can practice decrypting at home to make sure you know how to decrypt things. And the process will be, we'll send you the encrypted exam by email the day before. We'll release the key through an announcement on Open Learning and when the exam starts, and you'll be able to decrypt the questions. One thing Lachlan and I haven't yet worked out is whether we'll be releasing the whole exam in one go, or whether we're for the 6841 students, so they have a practical component as well, whether we release it all at the same time or whether we release the practical component halfway through. Maybe I should ask your opinion on that. That releasing it all at the same time is simplest. The danger is, if you're at all like me, you can sit down and jump straight into I always jump into the hardest questions first because they're the most fun. So you could jump straight into the practical questions and get stuck on them. And then 3 or 4 hours could pass and you'd just be stuck and freaked out and stressed. And maybe you just want to get the theoretical stuff out of the way. So I've got 2 alternatives. One is we just give you the whole exam up front. That'll be on 2 different papers, but you get them both at the same time. And you decrypt them both at the same time. And the other is you get both papers at the same time, and we send the decryption keys for the practical question 2 hours into the exam, so halfway through. You're absolutely welcome to keep working on the theory one after that time, and you won't need 2 hours to do the practical section. But it means you're sort of forced to have spent 2 hours on the theory section, which is worth most of the marks. So what do you think? Which do you prefer?
I would prefer to get them both at the same time.
Is that Mikey? I'm recognizing your voice. Isn't that weird?
It's not a dentist.
I thought you were not a doctor. It's so confusing.
That was the other chat. This time I'm not a dentist.
By hook or by crook, we're narrowing it down. You know, every time you name yourself, you're leaking a little bit of information about yourself.
Well, the good news is every year there are new professions being made up. Next time I'll be not an Instagram model.
Well, you don't know. Don't speak too soon. Now, should I put a poll up? because people are saying you can do polls, and I'm sure it's really easy. Ask a question. Right, here comes the question. I'm going to ask a question for you guys on Zoom. First poll ever. Clicking on the ask a question button. What's happening here? Type your question, enter a title for this poll. The title for the poll will be title. Anonymous. I'm not clicking the anonymous button unless anyone shouts now that they really want me to, because it's one more button to click. Type your question here. Shall we release or 6841 midway through? Should we release it? We get to answer yes. Midway is more than just an island. It's a good way to do exams. And answer 2 is no way. Oh, I wrote Norway. No way. I want it all at the start. Thank you, Nanny State.
I want it all.
Okay.
And I want it now.
And please sing your answers. That's worth 2 marks. Worth twice as many marks. Here's the poll. Launch the poll. I'm launching the poll. Can you see the poll? Did it work?
Yep, I can see it.
Ah, technology. Let's see. Well, it's pretty clear. Oh no, Midway's catch. Oh, it's like a race. It's like when we used to do poo sticks. I don't know if anyone used to do that. You drop 2 bits of, not actual poo.
Fight the Nanny State.
Nanny State. Oh, it's like a race. They're only going up. It's a bit like the total number infected with COVID. And that curve just goes up. Midway's more than. Look, it's coming pretty clear. All right.
Have you got more answers than you do have students in the course? Because you have all the 6441 people that can answer this as well.
Oh, yeah, yes. Tutors are worth 10 points.
Jump in and yeah, let's. This is a problem with online voting. Vote early, vote often. All right, that's pretty clear. And it was clear throughout. So the majority says they want it all at the beginning. I will give it to you as 2 exam papers. And how about we send you a reminder halfway through saying we're halfway through, and then you can just use willpower and not look at it till halfway through. How about that? Good. Wow. This is like democracy. That's fantastic. Very suspiciously similar to democracy. Now I can't go back. How do I share results? Oh, sorry. I didn't realize I hadn't shared it. Can you all see the results?
Yep.
Okay. Let me get back to our window. Oh, I should have been sharing it while the results were coming in. So while I was excitedly describing it, you couldn't see the results coming in. Is that right?
That's correct.
All this secrecy. Everything should just be shared all the time. All right. Technology is surpassing it. Well, it's surpassing me. Thanks, Shaman. So that's how we'll do it. Mail you the exams at the start, mail you the day before, mail you the keys at the start of the exam. I'll send a reminder halfway through, letting you know it's halfway through. I'll do all this through announcements on Open Learning. So for heaven's sake, make sure you get announcements on Open Learning to a mailbox that you can safely read.
Richard?
Yeah.
I missed the first 5 minutes, so can I just clarify? Does that mean that there are going to be 2 separate papers and 2 separate submissions for 6841?
Yeah. Well, let's think. That's a good question, Mikey. Is it Mikey or Michael?
Michael.
Michael. You don't, because for a while you're saying Mikey, but that was just joking.
Oh, it was Mickey Tittles.
Mickey. Oh, okay. Michael. Yeah, Michael. So I'm sorry, I've been calling him Mikey.
Either or.
Thank you. Well, if we were releasing it halfway through, we'd need to have 2 papers. I'm inclined to make it 2 different papers just to make it simpler for you, because then I can give the same theory paper to everyone. It will have, here's what I'm not sure at the moment. And actually, I don't want to set up another poll because that hurt my fingers, but I'd love to know what people think. There's going to be, the way it's looking at the moment is I reckon you'll take about 10 minutes to do a question. So I reckon, and I want it to be about 3 hours to do the exam. So I want the people doing 6441 to have about, I'm thinking 15 questions, and then you can spend 10 minutes on each. and that lets you do 5 in an hour and still gives you 10 minutes spare in each hour slack time. And then you get an extra hour at the end because it's a 4-hour exam. So that seems to be a fairly safe margin. So I was thinking 15 questions for the 6441s for theory, 10 questions for the 6841s for theory, and that's 2 hours worth. And then they can get 1 hour of theory from the question that Lachlan and Chris and their wonderful team are putting together. Mm-hmm. So do you want, what I was thinking of doing was giving the 6841 people 10 questions that I'd picked of the 15. Now I know what, if I ask, I know what you're going to say. Would you rather me just give you the 15 and you can pick 10 that you answer yourself? And everyone will say yes, but you know what happens?
You get the first 10.
Yeah, everyone gets so stressed by it all. It's like, oh, which queue will I line up in Woolies? You just start to worry about the questions and you half do one and then you freak out and go, no, this is stupid. I'll go and do another one. And I might almost be doing you a favor if I just give you 10 questions. You don't have to worry at all. Are you really sure you want to go through that pain of picking 10 out of 15? And
no, I'm very happy to have an assigned 10. I just wanted to find out what the format was going to be.
Oh no, we're getting to that. We're getting to that. But these questions help us pick the format. So can I just check though? Everyone with 6841. Oh, I should do the same. I'm going to do another poll. All right. I'm sorry. Can I edit the poll? That seems cheating. Oh, all right. Here's a new poll. Poll 2. Get to choose 10 of 15. The pain of choice.
Is this just for 6841?
This is 6841, 6441 people. You're just marking time.
Richard?
Yes.
Are all the questions weighted evenly?
Yes. I'm just going to make them all worth the same. Yes. So will I choose the 10 for you, or I prefer to pick my own 10 of the 15?
Richard, can you have a third option for I am a 6441 student?
Yeah. I am a 6441 student.
And should not be voting in this.
Okay. All right, here we go. Saving it. And it's poll 2. So let me close poll 1 somehow. Poll 2. How do I launch poll 2? Add what? What? Now I have to make it the poll go. You can't see the poll, can you? It's not just working magically that everyone can see it.
I cannot, no.
Ah, I've made it, but how do I start it? Save. I don't know how to run the poll.
How did you do it the first time?
Well, as soon as I finished creating it, perhaps because it was the first poll, it just showed it straight away. I'm going to click polling. I'm going to say poll 2. Here we go. Ha, 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 ha. Launch the poll. Pick which one of these you want.
Oh, now I don't know what to do.
I should have done I am an Instagram model.
Can you share the results?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry. No, I can't till it's end result. No, I'll tell you how it's going. It's sort of neck and neck between choose 10 for me and I'm a dentist. I mean, choose 10 for me and I'm 10. And they're neck and neck. I'll show you the poll. I prefer to pick mine slightly higher, but just so slightly. I'm a 6441 student is winning, and I'm a dentist has a remarkable number of people. I hope you're all being truthful. Okay, here are the results. I'm going to share them. I'm going to say it's inconclusive, even though you're going to look at it and think, well, it looks pretty conclusive to me. Here we are, share the results. I'm calling
that is a lot of dentists.
It's a lot of dentists. Look, guys, I'm I don't want to waste. I mean, almost we're doing now. This is a mocking of the actual dilemma we'll face in the exam. We're just wasting time on a stupid question that we don't have to think about. Does anyone just want to say a word? Someone press their thing if anyone feels really strongly.
Richard.
Yep.
What if you pick 10 or 15 and set them as the first 10, and then if people don't like those, they can skip and go on to the ones after those first 10?
Yeah. And is there some? Maybe I'll make the 10 first or something. Should I try and rank them from easy to hard? You'll work that out. I'll put my favorite 10 first. What do people think of that?
Can you maybe I was going to suggest put it like an X at the start of them or an asterisk or something, just because we'll lose track of what 10 is.
Yeah. That's a good point. Or actually, what I normally do when it's something like this is, you'll see this when the skeleton exam comes out. If it's answer one of the following 2 questions, I say answer one of the following 2, and at the start of the second question, I say, are you really sure you want to answer this question? I don't think you should be answering this question. Don't answer this question if you've answered the previous question. Just like all these warnings, because I know what I would do. I'd just answer them both and then realize later. So yeah, I will put asterisks or something near them, and I strongly suggest you just do the first 10. But if you really hate one of the first 10, then do another one instead. That's absolutely fine. Okay, look, I feel we've had democracy, but my real advice to everyone is go in there determined to do the first 10. It is a waste of your time to read other questions and double guess and start flip-flopping between them. It's like, with multiple choices, your first thought's always the best one. But if you keep going back to it and think about it, you'll invariably change a correct answer to an incorrect answer. That's human nature.
Hey, Richard.
Yeah. Shoot.
Is for 6441, are we meant to do all 15?
Yes, thank you, Annika. I'll go over that now. So now we know the structure of the exam, and now I can actually work out how we're going to do it. It's quite simple now. There is one exam paper for theory that contains 15 questions on it that goes to everyone. 10 of the questions have stars on them or something. The first 10, something reckoning of me saying, this is what I reckon you should do. And then there'll be some sort of line saying, probably don't go past this line unless you know what you're doing. If you're doing 6841, if you're doing 6441 though, you do them all 15. If you're doing
84.
Thank you. 6841, you do 10. Is that clear? Then 2 hours into the exam, you'll get a reminder from me, bing, an email that I've launched through the Open Learning announcement system. And it'll say, oh, you should be switching over now if you're doing 6841. If you're not doing 6841, you ignore that and you keep going. And do you want to bing every hour? Is that good? Or I'll just do a bing every hour. I'll say you're 1 hour in, you should have done 5 questions now. You're 2 hours in, you should have done 10 questions now. 3 hours in, woohoo, finish anytime you want from now on, but doesn't matter if you don't want to.
Richard Jinx.
Sorry, go
ahead.
Richard, is there any mechanism where we can ask questions or clarify things during the exam?
Yes, there is. That's right. Thank you, Mr. Let me go into the details in a second, but because I know I'll forget otherwise. Let me get Tom's question.
Can I ask that you don't use the Open Learning system and just email us directly? Because I have a feeling that Open Learning may have a delay more than email, and also the fact that you've got to click through Open Learning kind of makes it annoying.
Oh, don't you get an email? Doesn't it send you an email?
You do get an email, but I think there's a short delay. I think the delay would be shorter if you use email directly.
Okay.
About that?
Well, there's been a few announcements this term where the email's been delayed up to 4 hours. So yeah.
From Open Learning.
Yes.
So we're using just emails directly in 1511. We don't trust WebCMS enough to send the notifications out. So
thank you,
that's
Tom.
why I suggest it.
Great advice. And I will also make an announcement on Open Learning, so don't get confused, so that there's a record of what's gone out. So worst comes to worst, if you're panicking and you haven't got an email, you can at least go to a website and have a look.
Yeah, I also received exactly 1 email today about Lisa's announcements, and she made 2 announcements. So,
which one did you get?
Not the one about the not the one about the survey. The one about this session.
Really?
So,
someone else as well? Shaman nodded as well. Oh, lots of people are nodding. Oh no, I did ask Lisa for selective people. We don't want their opinion.
Could we get an auto refresh on the announcements page so we can just leave it open in another window and have it refresh every minute or so?
There's browser extensions
about 8 months ago.
Yeah, but that's worked for me, Kath.
I will put in a request. I'll make an announcement on the Open Learning Announcements bug team page and ask them if they can do that. There's a small chance it won't be ready in time for the exam. So I would also just click the link. I'm sorry.
Watch them break the website.
You could also
that's a good point.
Just chuck it up on like the CGI servers, which is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so you just have an auto refresh page and then have an index.html there.
Yeah.
So that's what we're planning on doing.
Yeah.
And I would thoroughly recommend that because it's unlikely that CSE is going to crash. And if it does, then we've got bigger problems anyway, because like Give would be down.
Submissions.
I will do both. How about that? And I'm not using a CGI thing. That is crazy times, but I will just set up a normal page with an HTTP refresh. How about that?
Yeah.
I assume most browsers just respect that now. They haven't stopped respecting it.
Yeah, they do.
It's an annoying feature.
Yeah.
So what would the page contain? Is it just the
any announcements from me and insults?
I think it's pretty simple if we just use like Google Docs and share the page, and then any updates you can always see that there.
Oh, Google Docs.
The other thing that I might suggest is having somewhere a clock that is in AEST, in case there are people who aren't in Sydney. Again, that's something we're looking into, just in case like people are confused about what the due time is if you're not in this time zone.
Okay, maybe I set up a Zoom session and I just point it at my clock. And then I can come out and wave and say hi to people too at random times to cheer you up. How cool would that be?
Spook.
And everyone have their cameras on, but I promise I won't look. Okay, so look, we've gone to a confusing place now because there's lots of suggestions and they're all good. And I have a funny feeling whichever one we pick will be all right. I like the idea of a Google Doc, but then everyone has to use Google Docs. I think what I will do is I will set up a web page that is just written in HTML. I'll write it in Vi or something like that. And I'll just whack it in the pub, and I'll give you a link from the Open Learning exam page, and you can just go there and it will constantly have announcements on it. But I'll also have the Open Learning page where I'll put the announcements to, and they'll get emailed to you, and I will also mail you in the middle of the way through the exam. And the reason I want to do this is on the Open Learning page, I want you to be able to ask me any questions you want. And as people ask questions, I'll just fill them in on that page.
I think Google Doc, you don't need to you don't need to be using a Gmail or anything, and you could use it anonymously as well.
There's 36 anonymous users currently in the revision notes for this session. So,
yeah,
or 35.
And it handles like numbers pretty easily.
So you're thinking just use a Google Doc, don't use anything else? I hate having discussions like this. It seems, but it's really important, but it seems we'll just spend hours and at the end we'll just work out how to do something. So let me.
Yeah, I think it's just a link and anyone can use that. If you can also control like editability or just view. So
how people ask questions and I answer them.
You can add comment or anything, or it could be editable as well. Anonymously, you can do that.
There's this danger that if someone went in and just graffitied answers to the exam thinking it was fun, that would be a disaster. I'm slightly nervous about it, and I'm not normally nervous about anything. It's weird for me.
Arthur suggested restrict editing access so no one can type into it.
But then why am I?
You still need a way for people to ask questions.
Yeah.
Whereas with HTML, you could have a form submission.
No, stop. This is crazy time. What we're doing.
Develop a protocol.
Each step makes sense, but we're heading towards crazy land, and I'm going to implement my own question and answer system in CGI. I can see that's where we're heading, and then you'll all just laugh at me in the exam when the exam.
Just refresh Open Learning when you have an issue, guys.
I think what I'll do is there will be a web page with an automatic refresh on it. So if anything goes wrong, we've got a fallback. Other than that, I'll use Open Learning, and you can ask questions on the Open Learning thing, because I imagine you'll be going through Open Learning looking at stuff anyway, because there's lots of data there. And if anything goes wrong there, I have a brilliant fallback plan, which is I've arranged to have a phone with a new phone number, and I will have it next to me, and I will tell you all that number before the exam. And anyone that has a crisis can please try all the other paths first, but you can message me a question, and then I will write the answer back on this document for everyone to see. And the advantage of that too is then if someone falls off the internet and can't decrypt the file, you can send me an SMS and I'll SMS you the password or something like that. That is the crazy place we've gone to. What does everyone think of that?
Can you also monitor the course email too, in case, like, I have a feeling Open Learning might break with that many people simultaneously on it, because that's what it did a while back.
Did it? Okay.
Or I don't know if that happened for anyone else, but just before job application was due, everything magically stopped working on Open Learning.
Look, this reminds me of a story. I don't know if I told you this, Laura. I don't think I mentioned it. Years ago, I was speaking to someone who was a sysadmin, and he went to sysadmin school, one of the best sysadmin schools there was, a training place in America. And he said what they used to do was they'd set you this massive assignment, and then the weekend before the assignment was due, when everyone was in the building working on it like crazy, they'd just go down to the basement and turn off power to everything. And then they turned it back on. And anyone that hadn't got good backups or that was trashed, they were destroyed. It was fantastic. And although that's a scary, mean thing to do, I think it's a really, just telling you the story is good enough. I don't have to be mean. You know, so it might have been I think it was Lachlan actually, who probably did that to you to make you, yeah. But I hear what you're saying. So I think we've worked out a protocol, and the protocol is, I will keep an eye on the course email all the time. I will keep an eye on this phone all the time. I will have a static web page.
With a clock.
No, I'm not going to have a static web page with a clock. I don't want to implement a clock in a static web page. I know you can do a little macro server-side include that'll put the time in and things. I guess we could do that in an auto.
We just have a JavaScript, like 2 lines of JavaScript that does it.
I think the story is there's this wonderful thing called the internet. And I'm pretty sure you can get an app that shows you time in Sydney or a web page. So I think I'm going to leave it up to everyone being super clever at being able to do that.
I think if you just type the time in Sydney into Google, it'll give it to you.
That's right. And this is cheating, and I don't want any more of this sort of stuff from you, Mr. Not a Dentist. This is the first exam question. What's the time now? And then everyone has to work out how to answer it accurately. And I bet by the time I mark it, no one will have got it right. But we'll see. That was me making a joke, because it'll be a different time when I like it. Talk Tau error. Tau talk. So I think we've worked it all out. It's incredibly more complex than it was when I started the first sentence of this session, but it's not so complex that I've got a headache yet, and I think it's a pretty clever plan. I will summarize it all on the exam page so you know what we've worked out. But hopefully there'll be a way for everyone to do everything. So still going back to Michael's original question, paper sent to everyone, theory paper, common paper for everyone, do the first 2/3 if you're 6841, do the whole damn thing if you're 6441. When you've finished it, if you're 6441, relax, rejoice, find out what the time is in Sydney, go nuts. When you've finished your first 10 questions for the 6841 people, then decrypt and open up a second paper, which will have some theory questions and some instructions about how to do a few web attacks, and just do the best you can. And then at the end, or I suggest constantly throughout as well, using Give, and there will be instructions on the exam paper itself and on the exam page on Open Learning, and you'll see them before the exam. So you'll get to see them all. Using Give, you'll submit it. And Lachlan, I haven't asked you to set that up yet, have I? But I'm sure that's straightforward and simple to set up. I know
it's mostly done.
Oh, is it? Oh, woohoo, fantastic. And if something goes wrong, then that's fine. You can still mail it to us, to the course account. That's absolutely fine. And we'll still get it. And that gives it a timestamp. And if you can't mail it and everything goes to rubbish and you can't do anything at all, but you've got the exam paper there, then what you do is you take a hash of it using OpenSSL, which you've all downloaded and decrypted by the time I give you the instructions on Saturday so you can test decrypting. OpenSSL lets you take hashes of something, take a hash of your exam paper, take a photograph of the hash and SMS it to me. And then you can give me the exam weeks later. That's fine. Because when I get it, I just rehash the exam. And if the hash is the same, then you haven't cheated and changed the exam paper. And if it's different, then you've wasted your entire time and the whole exam and the whole term was for nothing because the hashes don't match. And it's just a complete disaster. So I think that's a really good strategy. I'm really liking that. What do you guys think?
MD5 hash, right?
MD5 hash. Yes, definitely. That's right. That's part of the exam. I want you to use a decent hash. So you'll get marks for how you hash it.
So Richard,
yep.
Using Give, is that implying that we SCP our answers over to the CSE servers?
No. That's a really good question. Thank you. No. If I was going that way, that is the place of craziness too. No, Give has a web front end.
Okay. That
set up, and there'll be a link on the exam paper and on the exam site as well, telling you how to do it. And you just go into that web front end and upload it as a file.
Okay, cool.
Can we do SCP if we prefer?
You can do whatever you want, but just make sure we get the exam paper.
Okay.
Yeah. Do whatever you want. That's absolutely fine. Now, rules for should just say, are there any questions about any of that?
Yeah, I guess there would be detailed instruction about everything we just mentioned in the exam paper itself, right? About some.
Yeah, on the exam page and on the exam paper itself. Now, the exam paper is a text paper, so I'll probably have more details on the exam page itself. Mm-hmm. But the exam paper will have all that you need to know. And you will see that in the skeleton exam. Those instructions will be in the skeleton exam that you get at least one and maybe several days before the exam to look at. And similarly, the exam page will be ready for the exam to go live at least the day before the exam, so you can test it all. Yeah, thank you.
I also have a question.
Yes. Who's
so you said, this is Laura.
Yeah.
So you said you were writing down like a bunch of questions, ideas for questions onto like pieces of cardboard, and then you'll pick questions from that pool, right?
Yes.
Once you've selected the 15, is it possible that you release the other ones so that we actually have some practice questions that are relevant to our course content to have a go on?
How about I write one more question than I need and release that? Because the scrap of paper is the idea for the question that I think long and hard about. Then each one takes several hours to turn into a well-honed sort of actual expression.
Yeah.
The scraps of paper aren't necessarily so useful, but how about I write one more question than I need and release that?
Yeah, okay.
Is that all right?
Yeah, I'm just like, there's not really many questions on the technical content. I made a comment about this on like the sample exam page, but it's just hard because, yeah, the ones that are in the 2016 paper are not relevant.
No, that's right, because I don't think we had technical questions that year. Or if we did, it was a separate exam and you've only got the theory exam there.
Oh, not even like the 6841 content, just like, I don't know. I didn't know that a nonce repeats on average every 2 billion times, and that's why it wasn't pseudo-random or something like that.
I can't believe you didn't know that.
I know. Should have researched it.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, I think you weren't at the nonce repeating lecture. In fact, no one was there. That's a really good question.
Oh, I was at that lecture. I confirmed that that's what he talked about.
So let's think, what do you know? So a nonce can't repeat again. So if it repeats again, it's not really a nonce. But of course, if the nonce is 32 bits long, then it's a bit optimistic to call it a nonce, because if you do more than 32 bits worth of things, you have to have a collision, don't you? Can you see that like, yeah. And on average, how long would it wait for you to have a collision if they were generated randomly? Well, you told me that. Actually, you do know that.
Half the time.
Half the amount of time until you got a particular one. How long till you got a collision? So that's just two with the same nonce.
It's like the birthday question.
Birthday attack. And you do know that. Yeah. And what would the answer be if it was instead of, so the whole thing was stored with a 32-bit number, so you got 2 to the 32. How long till a collision attack is successful if you use the birthday method? Yeah, Ben's got it. He's cheating. You're not allowed to do this in the exam, Ben. But did you see it, Lauren? I'm sorry if you did, Laura. Sorry, I can't believe I did that. So yeah, on average, it takes a square root of the size of the answer space. And we learnt this with hashes, and hashes behave randomly. So actually it holds for all random things. So that would be a theory question. That would that would be as hard as it would ever get, because there I'm expecting you to know about the birthday attack, which I am expecting everyone to know about. And I'm expecting you to know that the idea of hash collisions is based on things colliding, which is a birthday attack, which is a collision. And then I'm expecting you to remember the square root rule. It's we only did like 3 bits of maths, and one of them was the square root rule. Do you reckon you would be able to do that?
Like, it makes logical sense once I thought about it, but I don't think I could have. I don't know. It just kind of, it's hard to know in that paper what we should be able to do and what we shouldn't. Like, for example, we didn't cover Diffie-Hellman, did we?
No, we didn't. Except in the last lecture, I said, "Oh, you guys should find out about Diffie-Hellman. It's really awesome." But I've never taught it. So the only way I could put it in the exam is a question that I would expect you to look it up during the exam and work it out for yourself during the exam. So I couldn't ask anything very hard, and it's not in the exam. It just, that was just a hypothetical theory.
Maybe would there be a chance for one of the tutors to go through, or you to go through the 2016 exam and make some kind of note on the questions that we shouldn't bother spending significant amounts of time because we haven't learned the relevant content?
That would be awesome.
So we know what is worth spending time researching and analysing.
Oh, you only need to research and analyse things we've done in the course. Don't work backwards from the exam. But do you want me to do that now? Why don't we just do that now? Is that a good way of spending 10, 15 minutes?
Yeah. That sounds good.
All right. I'm going to the exam central page. Oh, I can share the screen and you can see what I'm doing. How do I do that? Go to the exam central page. And what am I looking for? Sample exam. 2016. Oh, that's a bit old, isn't it? All right, let's have a look. Lots of stuff. So this is, it'll be similar instructions. Give a specific example demonstrating an attacker using a denial of service attack as a key part of a broader attack strategy. What was the purpose of the DOS part of the attack? Ideally give a real example of an actual and well-known attack. So in this course, we haven't looked at many well-known attacks, but actually we have looked at an attack that used denial of service. Which one was that? Does anyone remember?
About that submarine, I don't know, Navy, communicating with Navy.
The one where the British Navy was communicating with Australia and then someone else was intercepting it.
Wasn't that the Mitnick attack?
And Canada.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. No, I was thinking of the Mitnick attack.
That was the Mitnick attack. You did it with the British Navy and used the SECI to use Australia.
Yeah.
Ruined you guys forever, and now you're going to say, and wasn't there a time when Britain attacked Canada? I'm sure my lecturer told me about that years ago. Yes, thank you. You're right. Everyone's right. So yes, the Mitnick attack, one of the few attacks we've actually gone to in detail is that. So yeah, and I expect you to know the Mitnick attack because we talked about it. And the role the DOS phase played in the actual attack. Yeah, that's right. Of course, that would be an easy question to answer this time through because you just Google up the Mitnick attack and read about it. And use your own words. Don't copy paste people's answers in, but I'm happy for you to Google and look things up. Question 1. How many bits of security are supplied by a passport photo or thumbprint scan? Okay. So no one had done this before they saw this question. This was in there as a question from me to see how good people were at doing estimations of bits of security. And the marking guide for this was, it didn't matter what number people had, though we had a range of plausible answers. Outside of that, we were very suspicious. All that mattered was the reasoning that people did. And we were rewarding reasoning. And so people would say, I'm assuming this, and I did this calculation. So pick one of these measures and estimate the number of bits it provides, give the reasoning and calculations to justify your number. So how many bits of information, bits of security you get from a passport photo? So you have to work out, maybe thumbprint's even easier, but let's do a photo because that's harder. So really the question is, how much useful information can you get out of a photo? Like if I took a photo of Chris's face now, is this good enough for me to distinguish him from anyone else in the world? If it was, and I've got some super algorithm for it, if it was, then it's able to distinguish him from 4 billion people. So a billion is 30 bits. So it must be able to have at least 32 bits of information. And I guess if you're saying it's not luck that that's good enough to do that, I could do that with any random person I pick. Then you're starting to think, oh, okay, then there's probably a bit of redundancy there. So I'd expect if, say, new babies were born, that it wouldn't suddenly be that we start getting collisions now that we didn't get before. If the algorithm is that good, it would be able to distinguish the babies as well. So it wouldn't be just 32 bits. There'd be a bit of slack there. So an answer greater than 32 bits would be good. So that'd be if your assumption was that there's enough information to do that. But if you're looking at the picture of Krish on the screen, you think, man, he looks like a lot of criminal photos I've seen. You might say, I think from a photo, you'd be hard pressed even to uniquely identify someone within a country, within Australia. So, that's what, 20 million people or something like that. So you'd pick a smaller number. Or maybe people did an analysis. I don't mind how they did the analysis. I just want them to come up with a reason why they think there's a certain amount. So if your boss came up to you and said, I've got everyone's driver's license photo, do you reckon we can uniquely identify everyone in Australia? What do you reckon? How much information can we get out of this from all the passport photos? And I reckon from the passport photos, I can identify anyone in the world super accurately. You'd say to your boss, hang on, no. That's crazy talk, man. Because if you could do that, you're getting like 64 unique bits of information out of the photo. I don't think you could get that much information out of the photo. What are you getting? Eye distance apart? You're not skin coloring, maybe you're looking for scars. We're going to ignore all the hair stuff. There's eye spacing, there's nose shape, maybe there's lip length and thickness, and you try and work out how many bits you'd get from each of those. I don't know how are identikits made. Maybe there's 20 sorts of eyes or 50 sorts of eyes or 100 sorts of eyes. That's 7 bits. So you're getting 7 bits from the eyes. And then, and you just do little calculations like that, and you'd end up thinking, I reckon it's plausible I could at least get 20 or 30 bits out of a photo, but I can't see how I could ever get 50. Then that's an absolutely reasonable answer. And does that make sense? I just wanted people to think and actually say how much information they thought something had in the real world and have a reason for it, so that when a vendor comes to you in the future with some crazy plan, you just do a back of the envelope calculation and look at your nod and shake your head slowly, your boss, and shake your head slowly and say, let's not buy this product. He's just talking snake oil. Or you even say, shall we spend $1 million investing in AI technology to identify people from passport photos? And you'll say, actually, I think these photos are too low res. It's just no matter the best we can do, we're not going to be able to do it. So you'd know not to do it. Or you'd say, it's within the ballpark. Let's do it. If you're working for a financial person, you'd say, let's kick in the $5 million seed funding they need. This is possible. And if they could do this, this would be awesome. Does that? So this is a hard calculation question. I think this is actually asking you to think about how much information things have in them. And that's a hard thing to do.
Hey, Richard.
Yeah.
I just, from when I was doing this course in 2017, I remember you saying that this question, you didn't actually get any marks for the number that you provided. It was all to do with the analysis that you provided in the background. So if that is still the case, then yeah, you could give pretty much any number as long as it's realistic and you have good enough assertions.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. So someone that says, I don't know, 50 bits, that's a useless answer. But someone who thinks about it really carefully and has a whole lot of good reasoning, even if it's a bit flawed, they're just thinking about it and trying hard, then they'd get rewarded on whatever reasoning they did.
Hey, Richard, what happens if you took the approach of the total possible information that could be contained in a photo rather than...
That's an upper limit, isn't it?
Yeah. So would that be okay, or are you required to then go, well, this is the upper limit, but I think in a reasonable scenario, differentiating people, you need to be able to do blah?
Yeah. Well, you tell me. Suppose you're my boss and I've come to you and you've said, do you reckon we should invest $5 million in this startup because they reckon they can identify anyone in the world from a passport photo? And I said to you, well, look, a passport photo's got, typically they're a megabyte. So that's 1 million bits of information. That's more than enough information to identify anyone in the world. Would you think, I'm so glad I'm paying your salary, Richard. You are awesome. Like, what would you think of that answer yourself?
Well, yeah, okay, I see what you mean. But yeah, no, I think it'd be a bit unreasonable, right? That seems a bit high.
Yeah. I think this guy's given up too soon. So that's an upper bound. It's not going to give you more than 1 million bits of information. Thank you very much. But maybe in practice it's giving you less. So that would be an okay answer. If someone did that, that's like, well, they understand information theory a little bit. So, you know, not information, it sounds so fancy to say information theory. They understand that a photo contains information at least a little bit. But, you know, lots of those bits are the background and nothing to do with the face. And probably once you've got a couple of pixels of color, you can throw away all the remaining color pixels. You can very quickly see that lots of that information isn't needed to represent the face. And the eye, human eye, wouldn't use that to identify someone. So it's good as an upper bound. There'd be extra marks for noticing it was an upper bound rather than the lower bound. It'd probably be even more marks for noticing it was an optimistic upper bound, even if you didn't know how to pull it down, saying this is unlikely to be good enough. It's bound to be much less than this. That's much more impressive than someone that thinks that's a good answer and they should move on. So we're really just looking here for some of these questions. Remember, in this course, it's not about you memorizing stuff and it's not about you looking up facts and saying it. We want to see how you solve problems. And you've been solving problems all term long. Every tutorial class you've been solving problems. Every time you've been working on your something else, you've been solving problems. Every time I've been teaching you theory and saying, oh, go away and look this up and think about this. Even though you don't notice it, if you're curious in something and looking it up, you've been solving problems. And now at the end of the course, we're testing your ability to solve problems. And you will, and you will. And you'll be surprised how good you are at it. And thumbprint, well, maybe I won't do the thumbprint and you can think about it and share answers amongst each other and mark each other's answers. How many bits of information do you reckon are in a thumbprint? If you've got someone's thumbprint, is it the case, like they used to say in the 1900s in old detective novels, no two thumbprints are the same, you know, or are they the same for some people? What's the chance of a collision on thumbprints? That's almost like a hash question too, isn't it?
Brandon?
Be right back. I'm going to hassle my twin.
Yeah. And is it really Brandon that's going to come back? He's not going to fall us that easily. Okay. Question 2. Yeah, this was a very slow answer. Let's make the other ones faster. Suppose you, but I think that they were both really important. They were like key. I'm telling you what we're looking for in the exam, which is just your thinking. And don't be ashamed of your thinking. Even if you've only got a dumb idea, write it down. It will impress us. And if you can make the idea better, write that down. We're after how you think. There's no right answer. I don't think, did you mark any last year, Chris? Were you a marker last year?
I wasn't a marker last year, but I think I was a year before.
Okay. You'll remember from when you're a marker, no one ever has the answer we're looking for. And we don't care. The marking guide's more about the sorts of things that are good and the sorts of things that are bad. If we're asking you a question that just has one right answer, it's not such an interesting question.
Yeah, in that case, it's a multiple choice question. And even then, sometimes there's a couple of answers that are true.
Yeah. That's right. We're just trying to see how, and that's what'll happen. When you go for a job with Google, they're not going to sit down and say, what's the ASCII code for the capital letter A? Like the old Dick Smith employment.
42.
42. So suspicious. But instead, they're going to give you some problems and watch how you think. And actually, they ask you to talk about, they say, just keep talking while you're solving this. We like seeing how you think. And you talk through how you're approaching the problem. You talk through what you're doing. And all the time, they're looking at you and seeing how you solve problems. And often when I speak to students after they've done a Google exam, they come out a bit shaken, thinking they were really crap. And then I sometimes speak to the Google people that were interviewing them. They go, that was fantastic. That person was so good. They're amazing. Because you're always harder on yourself than you are. Every contact leaves a trace. When you are talking to them about how you do analysis, you are leaking your brain everywhere and they can see what your brain's like. And I can reassure you, everyone's brain in this course is very good. Suppose you're part of the original HTTPS protocol design committee. So we haven't looked at HTTPS as a protocol back in the dim, distant past. Why would you not use RSA to encrypt an HTTPS session? Well, we haven't really done this in enough detail, but you could probably have a stab at the answer. An HTTPS session is an encrypted web session. So I'm not going to set this question in the exam because we haven't spent a long time talking about this sort of thing. But I still reckon, even though you don't think so, that you'd be able to answer this question. Because what's an HTTPS session? It's just a normal web encrypted session. So how much traffic travels through a normal web encrypted session? You guys know how much?
Many.
It could be a big amount. What's RSA really bad at compared to other algorithms?
Performance.
Size, really big things. So why wouldn't you use HTTP? Why wouldn't you use RSA? Because it's stupid to use RSA because it's so slow. Why would you want to slow everything down? With the internet, you want it to be fast. That'd be like installing fiber optic everywhere, except at the very, very last little bit, making it go through copper wires or old coax cables or something like that. Why would you do something like that? I was at a meeting once with someone and we were talking about something and I said, they were talking about some protocol and I said, oh yeah, let's do that. I'm calling that security to the node because I don't know if you remember when they brought the broadband in, instead of making fiber optic go to everyone's house, they changed the plan and made it just go to something called the node. And they call that fiber to the node. And then the last leg is something crap and slow. So the whole thing runs at that slow crap speed. And that's called fiber to the node. And it's the stupidest idea you've ever heard of. So I invented a new phrase, security to the node, which is let's secure most of it, but leave the endpoints completely unsecure. And I thought it was so funny and I was laughing. But actually no one else around the table was laughing. And it's one of those moments when you suddenly think, I wish I had a bit more emotional intelligence, because apparently one of the ladies around the table was the advisor to Malcolm Turnbull or Alston or whoever the minister was. That I know.
Well, she should know how wrong she was.
Or she works at Telstra.
Oh, that was bad though, because I did want to get onto a certain committee to have influence over something, and I didn't get picked. Best not to insult the host. Yeah, security to the node. I'll probably ask you a question on that. So that's why you wouldn't use it to, amongst other things. You might think of all sorts of other reasons not to do it. And they're all valid, all the other reasons. So, I mean, we talked about perfect forward security, this idea that eventually the bad guys might be able to crack your keys no matter how good they were. So we like the idea that we have this throwaway session key and we keep changing it all the time. So even if someone eventually finds your master keys, they can't. So you'd want to use RSA session keys, and then that's confusing because how do you do a session key that's asymmetric? I mean, if you think it through, I mean, maybe you could work out a way of doing it, but I can't think of that. It's sort of harder, much harder to work out how to do asymmetric session keys rather than symmetric session keys. So I'm assuming you know, though I would never set this question, right? It's out of the scope of, it's too hard. You'd have had 3 hard questions for you in a row if I'd set these 3, because although you're capable of solving them all, that all require you to do creative thinking and apply theory we'd learnt to new and complex situations. I can only put 1 or 2 questions like that in. I can't have the first 3 like that. That'd be depressing. But you could do that. And I am expecting that you know about session keys and you know about asymmetric and symmetric encryption. You know little bits and pieces and you're capable, you know the shape of them all and things to look up and things like that. But I'm not going to get, the first question is going to be so easy. It's going to be a question that is just there. So after you've done it, you think, woohoo, I'm on fire, everything's good. I'm not going to put a really bad one in. Well, I will now because it'll be funny, but normally I wouldn't do it. And if everyone could take a photo of your face when you're doing the first question and send it in, that would really be great. Now, I'm joking. The first question, I promise, will be really easy. And if it's not, I owe you something. 3. Was there any more to that question? Why would you not use RSA? How would you achieve? Oh, look. So we even talked about perfect forward security. How could you achieve perfect forward secrecy in an HTTPS session? And then that's just really the idea of having session keys and throwing them away. And you just chat a little bit about, I don't know, what do you think could go wrong? You want to make sure that in 5 years' time, no one can decrypt what you did now. So hopefully you think about things like, I better make sure I really do throw away the session keys, that you can't get them back somehow. Oh, they better make sure they're generated randomly somehow, because if I generate them deterministically in some way, I guess if someone ever works out how I generate them, they could go back in time and re-encrypt them. This is the whole problem we're a little bit concerned about with the COVID thing, the temporary keys for that. What if someone can work out all the temporary keys? Okay, question 3. Alice and Bob engage in Diffie-Hellman. Well, I'm not expecting you to do Diffie-Hellman, though it is really fun. And I want you to look it up because your life is not complete till you've learnt Diffie-Hellman. And when you've learnt it, it makes you so happy. It is absolutely beautiful. But I like this question because they're doing some Diffie-Hellman and some calcs. I don't think we've done much calcs in this course. Have we done any RSA calcs?
Yeah, we did a bit.
Did a bit. Okay. So
number stuff.
Yeah, if I do like where sometimes with the protocol question, I go through telling you the protocol and then I ask you which line's stupid or where's the mistake. And the protocol is just like a story. So I do this, he does this, I do this, he does this, I do this. And I say, at what line could a bad guy suddenly eavesdrop or impersonate someone or something like that? So you have to think through the story, just using your common sense, thinking, if I was a bad guy, when can I do so? I do like questions like that, but it would have to be about something you know about. Or a protocol that no one in the world's ever heard of that I invented that I tell you. So you see it fresh for the first time. And Kristen, you're looking sad. It won't be hard, I promise. Are you worried that it's sounding all too hard? No. Because It really shouldn't be. Oh, no, making you laugh. Excellent. No, I'm happy. So question 4. Explain how malware could survive the hard drive being reformatted and the operating system being reinstalled. Well, that year we must have done some hardware security and talked a bit about how the hardware works, or maybe there was a project when I asked them to do hardware stuff or something like that. I could still ask you this question this year, I guess, because you could go away and do research, but it'd be a boring question because some of you would find a brilliant article by someone that just explains it perfectly, and others of you wouldn't know what to find, and it would be a mess. So it's not such a good question for this year. But it's an interesting thing for you to think about. Suppose you reformat the hard drive and reinstall the operating system. Is there a chance you're still infected? Hell yeah. So how could you still be infected? Just brainstorm now, not knowing anything. Tell me how you could still be infected.
It was in Windows itself. Like it was an O day in Windows.
I hadn't even thought of that, but yeah, it's you're reinstalling the malware when you install the operating system. Well done. That's the best answer. That's better than all of mine. Well done.
If it infects the MBR?
Yeah, if it infects something on the disk that isn't destroyed by the reformatting. What else?
Actually, can I just ask a quick question about the exam?
Yeah, Arthur.
Are you going to be writing the questions knowing that we can research them? Are you going to write questions like expecting us to research things?
No, because that would be a mean thing to do because you've only got 10 minutes for each question. So I'm not expecting you to go and do it, but I'm happy for you to go and do it. I think you should be able to do it yourself. But if you're like me, you'll have forgotten a few things. You might want to go and look them up. And you do have that spare 10 minutes every hour if you want to do a deep dive on one question. It is possible, amongst all the cards I've got left, there are 2 where I ask you to look something up. But they're not hard things. But they might both fall out.
All right, thanks.
How does that make you feel? Is that a good answer? There you've moved.
Making me feel a little more confident now.
What was making you worried that made you ask that question? What would you like my answer to be?
Oh no, I'd like the answer that you gave because you mentioned with this question that if we didn't know anything about hardware security, that we could just go and research it. So I was wondering if we might have to do that in the exam.
Oh yeah, I'm not going to set the exam for that happening. There might be 1 or 2 questions where I sort of flag it. But if you don't want questions like that at all, I can even leave that out. But you might like that. But no, I want this to be an exam you could answer just now in pen and paper, sitting here talking to me right now. Yeah. And Arthur, I'm trying to work out those pictures behind. They look familiar. Are they photos you've taken yourself that are black and white? They almost look Eschery. What are they? Behind you. Oh, they're not. Oh, that's nice. Did you take those? Or draw them? Are they pencil drawings?
I don't know. My family bought these somewhere at a market and we just put them in the house.
I love them. They're old props.
My parents know that I'm doing engineering, so they thought that putting pictures of planes up there would be appropriate.
Oh, your parents love you. I'm a bit like that with my girls. I know nothing about girls. I'm so incompetent. And I do all these things that I hope are helpful, and I'm pretty sure they're just laughing inside, but they say, hey, seriously. So yeah, they're doing it because they love me. All right. Thank you, Arthur. I like those pictures. And if one of the questions is draw a really interesting propeller with 3 blades, already you got a head start.
No, I'm going to stuff that up and do 4.
Yeah, I like that even more. If I say draw a propeller with 3 blades and you draw a propeller with 4 blades, I'm going to be tempted to give you 4 marks.
I mean, technically it's still got 3 blades. It's just got a bonus.
It's getting better and better. I think that's 11 marks, not just 4 marks. Well done. Yeah. There was, I'm sure I mentioned him. There's some Spanish poet that said, when they are, did I tell you this already? I can never find the poem. If anyone finds it, please remind me. I read it once and I've never found it again. If they tell you to write between the lines, turn the paper sideways and write across all the lines. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so you chair the government panel. So let's look at how to answer this question. I haven't even read the question yet, and I already know a little bit about how to answer it and probably where people would go wrong answering this question. If it's saying you're chairing a government panel considering something, I think in most exams, from chatting to students after exams, they think, oh, that's all window dressing. They think, I'll get a boring question like they used to in the old maths textbook, and I'll put some pictures around it and put window dressing on it to make it look like a real question. And I can just strip all the window dressing out and find the real question hiding inside. But actually, the real question for me starts with the first word. So if I'm telling you you're chairing a panel, I'm doing that. There's not a word I'm writing in there that I don't think is important to the question. So if I'm saying, well, there might be 1 or 2, but the general theory is everything in there is carefully selected. So if I'm saying you chair the government panel, I'm saying, I want you to think you'll answer this question from this point of view. So you have the ability to bring about change, but you probably don't have the ability to make lots of change. You probably have the ability to make recommendations to powerful people. That you're representing the government's point of view. So you're able to make quite wide-ranging recommendations, not just about how one company should go, but how the laws should be or changed or something like that. So you chair the government panel considering the introduction of a new mandatory data. And they have brought it in since then. It's so good. New mandatory data breach notification requirements for organizations. You've just finished reading all the recent public submissions, which we would have talked about that year. What are the main arguments for and against introducing such a requirement? So here, you just summarize, I guess you're just demonstrating that you've thought about it a little bit. And then what do you recommend? And this is the thing I'm always interested in. No marks for the recommendation is what we normally say. Marks are for your reasoning to support it. So what do you recommend? And then why are you recommending that? Okay, and it looks like it's a for or against. So we're asking you to recommend should you or should you not, should we or should we not introduce mandatory data breach notification? And even though I think it's a great thing, and I probably leaked that this year, there would have been people that wrote introduce it and had hopeless reasons and wouldn't have got a mark. And there would have people that said don't introduce it and they would have given really good reasons for not introducing it and they would have got full marks too. Yep. So you don't have to agree with me. In fact, it's a bit more impressive if you don't agree with me, except for you, Michael. You need no more encouragement. But yeah, don't feel at all you have to double guess me or the marker or what we want. We just want you to demonstrate how well you've thought about things, or you can think. Question, is this useful to keep going like this? How are we going for time? It's 6:15. We are burning through a lot of time. What do you want to do?
Actually, another quick question about the exam.
Yeah.
Can we write our reasoning dot points, or does that have to be like a proper English essay paragraph?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I should have made that clearer. No, it has to be proper English, and it has to be spelt correctly, and you can't split infinitives or...
Do we get bonus points for commas and semicolons?
No, Arthur, you were very polite to go along with that, but no, I would never ask you to do that because I'm not capable of doing that. So how could I ask you to do that? That would be hypocritical. Remember, I'm just after your ideas, except if there was a communication question where I said something like, draft an email you could send to your employees to encourage them to do this or that, then I'm really interested in how you draft, if I've never asked a question like that I can think of. But unless the question was literally about communication, I'm just interested in your ideas. So make spelling mistakes, make it messy. I mean, it makes it hard for us to mark, so please don't do that. But if you wanted to, it wouldn't count against you at all.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Another question, Richard.
Points are awesome. Yeah, shoot. Brandon. Or Brandon's brother, now we're not sure.
Who knows? Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Green, that's fine. So in this exam, there were lines indicating how much you're expecting people to write.
Yes.
Then we're getting, will there be lines or...
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that question because that's something I forgot to mention. So far, for every question I've done nice wording for, I've said for every section between 5 and 25 words. And one of them is between 25 and 125 words. So for every section, I'm telling you literally the word count. And I was going to suggest that everyone make sure that you've got a text editor that you can highlight a block of text in a text file and find out how many words are in it. So yeah, so I'm literally telling you that because that's what I like. I like to know what I need to do. So that's what we're telling you. So yeah.
Is that a soft limit?
Well, you know us, we're not good with hard things, but yeah, it's what we want. Someone only had 2 words. If I've said 5, I'm trying to give you help with these limits. It's not trying to help me.
But if we go over them, is that okay?
So it's not brilliant, but I'm not going to take marks off for going over them.
Okay.
But it's not brilliant. I'm giving you those limits to help you. And here we could ask Chris, who I think was saying that he had marked 1 exam. Oh, Lachlan, you've marked lots of exams, haven't you?
That's right.
Where are you?
No, targeted.
Yeah. 1 or 2.
1 or 2. So Lachlan and Chris, now you're both here. Would you agree with this? This is my experience, and I've talked about it with tutors before, and we've marveled about it over the years. I don't know if I've ever chatted about it with you. The best answers are usually quite short.
Yeah, people who don't know what they're talking about tend to waffle on to try and hide that.
Yeah, yeah. So you can normally look at the length of an answer and you just suddenly think, uh-oh, this isn't very good. So if you've got the right thing, it should be quite short. So if I say between 5 and 125, so I actually practiced writing answers to that one, spent quite a while on that one to come up with those limits. Between 25 and 125, though I did like the fact that our powers are 5. But I couldn't get a good answer in under 5 words. No matter how I tried, answers less than 5 words were a bit flippant and didn't have enough information. So if it was shorter than that, I'm thinking you're leaving important things out. So I didn't want you to think yes or no, or yeah, do this, or I think they should encrypt their file. Or, well, actually, that probably is 5 letters. But essentially, it's giving you a clue that I actually want more than a 1 or 2 word answer. And 125 is I wrote wordy, long answers that had way too much in them, and I added them all up, and they were about over 100. That was about the size. So you don't get extra marks for writing more, and for waffling, you don't get extra marks, because remember, we're looking for how you think. And that's why we always say write the most important thing first and things like that. It's not as though there's oh, Adam, you're here. How long have you been here for? Adam Smallhorn.
Hello. Yeah, I've just got a mouthful of pizza right now. But I've been sitting in. Yeah, I've been listening.
Oh, you have been there. Hey, have you heard me ask the question to Chris and Lachlan? You've marked lots of things over the years, surely. Yeah. We've marked it, haven't we? Yeah. Would you agree with this comment I'm making about length?
Yeah, 100%. The 15 mark ones are a delight to mark because they're easy, they're short, they're well written. They've spent time thinking about the order of the questions and the most important things at the top, and they've refined their sentences multiple times to, compactly. It's just a delight. They're easy to mark, and echoing the thoughts. The long ones, again, the waffling doesn't really help. Yeah.
That's exactly it. We're looking for what's most important. So if you're waffling, it means you sort of don't know what's important. You're just keeping adding a bit, then adding a bit and adding a bit, and it's all a mess, and you're just revealing a mess. We want you to know, after you've thought about it, this is really interesting. There are probably 10 things I could say, but for me, the most overwhelmingly important one is this. So then you put that at the front. And then you say, and also you consider this and this. And once you've done the top 3 or 4 of them, you've probably done enough. And you can see from the number of marks I've given it normally how many I'm expecting. Because I'll probably give you 1 mark for each or 2 marks for each. So I would keep it short. I can't remember who asked the question. Keep it short. If you went over, if I said 25 to 125 and you found you were going over 125, I think it is a serious danger warning to you that your mark is going to look at it straight away and instantly think it's not good. And that won't affect your mark, of course. They'll still read it, but it'll be a right feeling they have. It's unlikely to be good. In fact, it's almost impossible to be good. And also, you get most of your marks in the first paragraph or so you write. So even if you are adding value after all those words, you're just wasting your time. You've got 99% for this question already. We max them out quite quickly because we love giving away marks. So it's not worth going into more detail if you haven't answered all the other questions. I can't remember who asked that question. I think someone asked it.
That clarifies it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Richard, just on that, if you spend 30 seconds actually thinking about the question and planning your response before you start writing, you'll save your time in the end. Like, stop, take the pen off the paper or fingers off the keyboard and think about the answer before you start writing. Otherwise, it's just going to be hectic and messy. You'll save time not writing than if you just start blurting things out.
100%. And if you're like me, it's very hard to delete something once you've written it. You try and keep words and you move it around and you mess things. I would suggest you have some index cards. Write your answer on an index card. Jot down what you think the main points are, scribble it, move it around. Spend a couple of minutes getting your answer sorted out and then write down the key things. I reckon you'll get a much better answer that way.
I have additional question on.
Ask away.
So would that be mentioned in the instruction in the question? Because some people might have actually missed this lecture.
Oh yeah. It'll say in the questions, literally the ones I'm drafting now say, explain your reasons in brackets, 25 to 125 words.
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, I like things to be really explicit. So yeah, I'll set all that down.
Yeah. We get into the exam mood and just forget like what you said. Was it 25 or 75 or?
Oh no. I'll say it's different for every question. I put down how long I think it should be. Okay. And but don't forget, I'm going to release the skeleton of the exam at least the day before the exam, hopefully even sooner. So it depends, because there's a lot of to and froing as I send it out to people and they come back with sensible suggestions for making it better. And I don't want to release the skeleton until it's squeaky clean. you will see these things. This will all be in the skeleton. So it won't even be a surprise when you go into the exam and you'll be panicking and not reading it. You'll be able to read the whole skeleton of the exam before you go in and think, oh, maybe I don't want to answer that question. Look at this, got all those things that say 500 to 1,000 words. Maybe I want to answer this question that says 2 to 3 words. Yep. And the last thing I wanted to say, that something Adam said reminded me. Every year we get to this point and I suddenly go, oh, I forgot I was going to do that. And I can't believe I've done it again. I've forgotten I was going to do something that would have been really good for you. If any of you are tutors next year, can you remind me at the beginning that we're going to do this? I think you are a changed person once you've marked an exam. I reckon once you've marked an exam, you are so better at doing exams in the future. You're rolling your eyes, Lachlan. Is that right?
No, I'm very much agreeing.
Yeah. As soon as you've marked an exam, you suddenly realize what waffle looks like. You suddenly realize the mistakes everyone makes and that you realize you make them. It's like once you're on an interview panel, it's so much easier to do an interview once you've actually interviewed someone because you just see what the mistakes people make. So I have this great idea, and I've only ever done it once, that I'll get everyone in the course to mark some exams before they do an exam. And then you'll be heaps better at doing exams. And one year, the last year we had pen and paper exams, I got all the students, I said, I'm going to hand your exams out next year, so don't put any personally identifying information on them, only on the front page. And then I went through and spent an afternoon ripping off 300 front pages. And then I just handed out in the tutes exams from last year's exam, and I got everyone to remark exams from the previous year. And it was fantastic. Was any of you in the course when I did that? No, it was back in the old pen and paper days. So we should do that again. If someone can remind me, let's do that next exam, because it will help you to mark other people's exams. You will suddenly realize what an exam paper looks like from the other side.
I have something to share. I would like to relate this to attacker versus defender mindset. Once you're an attacker, it would be a different perspective if you get into a defending job.
That's right. Yeah. That's a very clever analogy. And also I really like that the examiner is an attacker. It's something quite right about that, isn't there? So that's really good.
I have a question about reasoning.
Yes.
Would you prioritize depth or breadth of reasoning when you're kind of having that first?
Oh yeah, it depends on the question. I mean, hopefully it's pretty clear from the question. So if we're asking what are your top 10 recommendations, I want to check you're not overlooking things. I'm looking for breadth. And if I'm asking you to pick one and explain how it'll work or something, it should be clear from the question, I'm hoping.
Hey, Richard.
Okay. Is that right, Kev? Yeah.
I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
One, I think you might have already covered this before, but we're writing our responses in our own little text file, is that right? And then just...
No. I'm sending you the exam questions in a text file.
Okay.
Editing them in, your answers into the file I send you and sending it back to me.
Okay, no problem. And the second one was, did you really have a mullet?
Did I really have a what?
A mullet?
A mullet?
Oh, you're not reading the chat, right? Okay, never mind.
No, I'm not reading it. What's happened in the chat? Did I ever have a mullet? I don't
It's all good. It's all good. It's all good.
Maybe I did. One year I did dye my hair blue. So, you can probably see that in my open learning.
Everyone can see it, yeah.
And that was, did I ever tell you that story? I'm sure Adam knows this story. There was a student that I met who was quite depressed and very shy, painfully shy. In fact, she hadn't come to any lectures in first year, and she'd just come to a lecture in second year for the first time. And she'd spent all first year just hiding in her college room and doing things remotely. And that often happens. And she was so nervous about any answer she ever gave. And I used to turn up to the lecture early and she'd be sitting outside patiently, sort of quietly by herself. And I'd just sit down and chat with her. And I soon realized, oh my God, this is the smartest person I've ever spoken to. She was just absolutely brilliant, but she thought she was really stupid. And whenever I asked her about anything or we talked about anything, her answers were so good. And I started getting her to do little bits of, answering questions in class and explaining things to the class because she did it better than me. And then one day she came up to me and said, I'm just really depressed and stressed by this whole course in uni. I'm going to drop out because I think I'm going to fail. And I said, there's no way you're going to fail. You're doing amazingly well. And she said, no, that's no good. It's out of control. I'm going to fail. And she had dyed hair. She just dyed her hair. And I said, why did you dye your hair? That's really cool. And she said, I just wanted to be different and bold. And it was really exciting and brave. And everyone should dye their hair, to make me feel empowered and things. I said, that sounds fantastic. I'm so boring. I never dye my hair. And then she said, well, I'm just going to fail this course. And I said, I tell you what, if you pass the course, I'm going to dye my hair. And if you get a high distinction, you can pick the color. And she said, "You're on." And she stayed in the course. She got an HD and she made me dye my hair blue. And for quite a long time, one year, I had bright blue hair, which was a bit weird because at that time I was going for promotion and various things, and I looked a bit silly.
Richard.
Excellent story. Yes.
Your open learning avatar is your blue hair.
That's it. That's right, Michael. That's it. It's my favorite picture. That's why I've left it there. I just love it so much. Every time I look at it, it reminds me of her. She's amazing. She went on to do, she's so smart. So smart. So any of you thinking you're stupid or you should give up, for heaven's sake, don't. You're amazing. The world needs you. But of course, I know you never believe it. It's true. Now let's have a look. What are we doing? So we've done the government panel 1, question 6. We'll go faster. In the actual exam, I won't be chatting to you and telling you anecdotes, so you'll actually move faster than this. Question 6, you're cryptanalyzing an unknown ciphering device used by a chosen plain text. So you know what chosen plain text attack is? Do people know what that is? It means you're a bad guy. So there's chosen plain text, chosen ciphertext, known plain text, known ciphertext. So these are depending on how much information you know when you're trying to decrypt something. So a chosen plain text attack means I can supply a plain text and force you to encrypt it. So if I wonder what this word looks like, I could do a chosen plain, I could give you that word, you'd encrypt it, and I'm going to use that to help me try and work out your key. You know that an initialization vector is being transmitted in the ciphertext, although you don't know which bytes of the ciphertext contain it. Therefore, sending two identical plain text usually gives a rise to differing ciphertext. I hope all that makes sense. There's an IV added to the beginning. You're not sure if the IV is generated pseudo-randomly or it's a nonce. You and 2 billion. Oh, this is a great question. It's quite hard though. You send 2 billion identical single packet messages and generate, this would be a great way of cryptanalyzing such a message. You generate 2 billion ciphertext and eventually you find a pair of ciphertext packets which are identical to each other, but it took you 2 billion. Is it more likely it's generated by pseudo-randomly or a nonce? Well, you guys tell me, is it more likely that they're picking a random thing each time for the IV or that, they're using a nonce like a counter or some sort of sequence that they're ensuring is only used once? Because if the IV was the same in 2 plain text messages, you'd get 2 identical ciphertexts. Yeah, the only thing that makes a difference is the IV. That's the only thing giving you a different encryption, like WEP does. So what do you guys think? Which one is it? Why?
I'd say it's, wait, can we answer? Or are we thinking?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm thinking it's pseudo-randomly because we talked about this in our tute a while ago, but if it's a nonce, then it shouldn't occur again.
Yeah, this is the problem. When people say nonce, which is number used once, it won't use again, except if it's a 32-bit nonce, after a while it's going to get used again.
Counter rollover?
Yeah, the counter will roll over if it's a counter, for example. Often you implement these things as a counter.
Right.
You can see you couldn't have more than 2 billion different nonce values.
Okay, and then I guess the question would be then, does a 32-bit nonce, is that equivalent to a collision at 2 billion?
Yes. Yeah, that's the question. Really,
at the start of the lecture, we discussed, and the answer was yes.
Yeah, that's right. When would you get a repeating IV first? Would you get a repeating IV? Would you get a repeating IV if they were just generated randomly? I picked a 32-bit random number, then I pick another 32-bit random number. How long would I go before I got a collision? Or if I've got a counter that goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, until I roll over, how long will I go till I get a collision? Which one do you think would give you a collision first?
To quote Richard Buckland, if you have a random IV, you'll get a collision in the square root of the space. And if you have a counter IV, you'll get a collision if you have poor code.
If you fill up, if you fill up the whole space. So yeah, 32 bits, you'll get a collision after 16 bits. Or what's that, 6 plus 10, so 6 is 64, isn't it? So 10 is 1,000, 64,000. So after 64,000 of them, you'd expect to get a collision. But we didn't get a collision until 2 billion. Sounds to me like they're counting up from 0 to the maximum and then starting again. It's a hard question, isn't it, Brandon? So there's a whole sequence of hard questions here. And don't worry, you'll stuff up some of the questions. Don't get depressed by the hard ones. They're only hard to you because we haven't spent much time doing this stuff this year. So it's fine for you to get 1 or 2 of these to have to think about them, but they're not going to be peppered through the paper like this. This must have been a year when we were doing lots of cryptanalysis and lots of practical calculating exercises and so on. Suppose in the future UNSW computing students have spread all over the world. They have now. And all printf vulnerabilities and buffer overflow vulnerabilities in all software have been found and patched. List 4 different examples of data control interaction style vulnerabilities, which attackers will still be able to exploit. If you can think of more than 4, put in the 4 most significant at the top of your list. So in other words, other than buffer overflows and printfs, what other sorts of vulnerabilities are there? How do people actually get into things? What actually happens in the real world? So this would be a question of just knowing, what are the common ways that attackers get in, and which of them are memory corruption or buffer or printfs and which aren't. And so we'd give some marks for thinking of good ones here, and we'd give a lot of marks also for putting them in a good order and having a good reason for that. Question 8, many operating systems and antivirus systems now give preferential treatment.
Just to jump in there, you said the question asks to list, does it not? Or am I reading the wrong question?
Yeah.
But then you said you'd give marks for the reasoning of the ordering, etc. If you're asked to list, are you also expected to then elaborate on that list?
Sorry, I was actually leaking a bit of information there, and I was reading this question smiling. It was one of the questions on my cards. I didn't realize I've actually asked it in a previous year. And this year, these questions are short answer questions, which are very tiny and only worth a few marks, I think 5 marks each, whereas you've got twice to 3 times as long to answer each question in this one. So the question I'd actually written for this version of the question, I'd asked not only to list, I'd ask you to give reasons. But yeah, for this one, if I say list, I just want you to list, and you'd know because I'd say, 5 to 10 words for each or something. Oh, and I abandoned the question, so it's not in the examination. It wasn't exactly worded like this. Actually, this is worded better. Young me was better than me now. But does everyone think they could have answered that question if it had come in? Ways that people can get in even if memory corruption was fixed. What sort of things would you have said? Just randomly someone say something.
Is this meant to be a more technical question or like a theoretical?
No. Just what vulnerabilities are out there? What are the top 10? What are the top 10 ways?
Are we looking at any vulnerability or data control?
Oh, it's got to be a data control one. So you'd go through your mental list of the top 10 and you'd think which ones are data control. But most of them are.
There's a couple of suggestions in the chat.
Oh, yeah? Tell me one. Oh, shall I look in the chat? Thank you.
That'd be better, yeah.
Let me have a look. How do I even see the chat? Now I'm sharing my screen. It's so complicated. I think I'm going to have to stop sharing the screen. Now I can see. Top men. Yeah, you go off the the top 10. Social engineering could count if you can mount the argument that it's data control. So send an email, a fake email from your employer, pretending to be a spoofed email, pretending to be from your boss, saying, change the bank account for Officeworks. They now want to be paid at this new bank account. And then you would obey that email, which was turned into an instruction and was controlling what your firm did. And then the next couple of invoices you pay to Officeworks, you're paying to the banker's account, the criminal's account. After a while, you get an angry letter from Officeworks saying you haven't paid our account for a while. And you say, yes, we have. And we put them in the new account that you told us. And then they say, we never told you a new one. And then you go, uh-oh, and the blood drains from your face and you realize you've just spent millions of dollars and you can't ever get it back. And you still owe Officeworks as well, which hurts even more. That's a data control example. SQLI, yeah, that's right. So any sort of thing that's interpreted, that's some sort of injection, though the people in 6441, did I ask them to know about SQLI or not? I don't think I did. So I'm not expecting 6441s tonight, but if they did, they could put it down. A Word document, with macros turned on that can do stuff, so on and so on. I'm sure you can think of lots. Even if you only thought 2 good ones and 2 lame ones, that sounded like full marks to me. Because how we normally mark these things is one way I often mark when I've asked you to list things in order, most important first, is I say the first one I'm marking out of 2, the next one I'm marking out of 2, and the next 2 I'm marking out of 1 each. So if you've got a brilliant answer, 3 or 4 down, you still get full marks for it, but that's only 1 mark. Whereas if you put it early up, if that makes sense. So So yeah, a couple of good ones and a couple of crap ones will still get you 4 marks or close. You got scam. Yeah, look, there's lots of ones. So yeah, just think about it. See if you can come up with 4. You should be able to, if you can come up with 2, you're doing well. And then a bit of plausible waffle for the other 2. Get your part sympathy marks for a small number. I'm just trying to get back to the questions. Is that a good answer, by the way, to someone? Is that enough information? I'm thinking silence is yes. Because I can't see anyone's face or the comments anymore because I'm looking at the question.
I suppose with questions like this that just involve asking for methods,
yes,
it is a bit easier just to look it up because it's like, oh, methods of attack.
You could.
So
yeah, you could. You could just look up the OWASP top 10 or the essential aid, or you could look up any of those things. Yeah. It's a harder question to set really in an open book exam. We talk about signed codes. What are some ways that you could get your code signed? And that's really just knowing about PKI and how all that.
Could you share a screen again, please?
Oh, sorry. I thought I was sharing.
You just
share screen.
Cool.
Yeah, operating systems give preferential treatment to code that's been signed. How could you fake sign things? So we spent a little bit of time on PKI. And I think I might have mentioned there were a couple of fake Microsoft certificates that were issued that let people issue updates claiming they were from Microsoft, but they were fake and they get malware into the operating system. So this is a sort of question about that sort of thing. How could you fake some certificates? How could you get around people that'll only apply updates if they're signed properly with some sort of PKI infrastructure? And just think of ways they could get it signed. And if you did that PKI reading, remember I said the Bruce Schneier 10 reasons paper that you should read and a few other things, just reading a bit about PKI and the weaknesses of PKI, you'd easily, or look up a couple of PKI attacks, just to make sure you understand sort of generally what PKI does and how people get around it. This would be a very easy question to answer. So it's a good thing to study now. And what have I said? If you can think of more, just list the 4 most important. Oh, and you can do the other ones as well. Woohoo, what a generous, we're accepting all sorts of answers. But yeah, really, we just want 4. If it says this, just put 4. Well, do whatever you want. Always do whatever you want. This Ruby code decrypts any supposedly insecure Snapchat image in a person's phone cache. You don't need to be able to program in Ruby or indeed even understand the syntax of Ruby to answer this question. Oh, I can't wait to see what the question is then, because I can see some code coming up. Your background knowledge of programming from Python or C is sufficient. Oh, now, in those days, you had to have done first-year programming to do this course. Now it's possible to do this course without having done any programming. So I couldn't ask this question unless you're in 6841, where I assume you can code. Snapchats asked you to improve their security. They ask you, I'm pretty sure this is real code, that is a real vulnerability. They asked you if they should move from okay. What are the things in here that you're thinking aren't good? Is there something interesting in here that's springing to everyone's attention straight away? What is it?
I can see a plain text key.
Yep. But Arthur, what were you going to say? Or you're just stretching? Yep.
I was stretching.
Yep. Anyone else? Rick? He's just singing and dancing.
Can ECB?
ECB. ECB. Might all be gibberish if you can't speak Ruby, but hopefully ECB is sticking out. They're using ECB mode. What do you think of anyone that uses ECB mode?
Zoom.
Shouldn't, yeah.
Yeah, Zoom. Good.
Zoom. And Zoom also used 120. I think, did Zoom literally also use AES 128? I have a feeling they did.
Yeah, it's 128.
This could have been Zoom. We predicted it years in advance. How funny is that? Yeah, so there you go. ECB, shouldn't use it. Modes of encryption, hidden in there. Then some other stuff. What are the main weaknesses? The second weakness. All right. That's pretty cool. This question relates to the film Die Hard 2, which you watched in week 13 STUVAC. In the past, long before you guys were born, actually, probably, we used to have 13 weeks in this course. And the best stuff all happened in weeks 11, 12, and 13. And to get to 13 weeks with this course, all we did was throw all that stuff away. Not really. We threw away the first 3 weeks that were boring. But anyway, Die Hard 2, which you watched in week 13, is an interesting film. I'd forgotten we'd done it that year. FAA. So essentially this question here is a scenario question where I'm not going to bother describing the scenario because they've seen the film. So the FAA is the National Aviation Authority of the United States. Blah, 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 blah. Suppose the film was real. And after the events depicted in the film, the FAA appoints you. So this is not color text. You are making recommendations now as the National Aviation Authority of the United States with the powers to regulate all aspects of American civil aviation, including the construction and operation of airports, management of air traffic, and the certification of personnel. So you have all these powers, and you're being asked to make some recommendations, so you can use those powers. But if your recommendation, like sometimes for Halifax, people make a recommendation. I say, you're the Port Authority. It probably happened this year because it was at the start of the course on our learning exercise. You're the Port Authority. What are your recommendations? They say, maritime laws should be changed so that people pass on the left rather than the right, or right, or, something. And you think, well, you're not going to be able to change the rules of all the ships in the whole world if you're the Port of Halifax Port Authority. That's not the sort of thing you have any control over. So answer the question in using that color text. What recommendations would you make? Oh, I even say here, look, I'm so helpful. Don't make military or drug trafficking recommendations, for heaven's sake. It's not what you have the power to do. As usual, put the most important recommendations at the top of the list and briefly justify or explain each one. Your recommendation, your justification. Your recommendation, your justification. Your recommendation, your justification, blah, 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 blah. Oh, that's all we said. Oh, okay. I thought the question asked a bit more than that. Must be misremembering it. And then part B, in the old days, part B was worth heaps more and part A was lots of little questions. This year, all the questions are just worth the same and they're all worth 10 marks. And the way we set the exam is it's about a mark a minute. So a 10-mark question, a 10-minute mark question, spend about 10 minutes on it and that'll leave you a little bit of slack at the end. Relates to an article, blah, 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 blah. That article would be supplied with the exam. Oh yeah, it even says here, see supplied PDF. So I expected them to spend a little bit of time reading and use some of their precious 30 minutes to read this article before they analyze. So they was reading something sight unseen. Unless, of course, they'd been following the news all the time, in which case they probably had a slight advantage over other people because they might have already seen and thought about this. So
that does bring up a question.
Yeah.
Hypothetically, if you had a question about COVID safe in the exam, would that be something that we would be at an advantage to be keeping up to date on the developments of that, or would that be taken as a snapshot of the situation when we did the shoot on COVID apps?
That's a good question. I mean, they're two different questions. It could be either. Depends what I wanted to make the question assessing. If it was assessing the fact that you're staying on top of security events and things like that, then it would be the former. And if it was really about applying some particular piece of knowledge or skill, then it would be the latter. I am expecting everyone's following the news and just staying on top of things, but it would be a mean thing to make that kill you on a question if you hadn't been doing it. But maybe it could be a slight advantage if you'd done it or something. But it would always be the case that, like in this case, I would give them enough information that you'd work it out yourself. And certainly now you've got the internet, probably hard to write a question like that. But yeah, anything that we've told you to do in the course is legitimate for the final exam. But you'll see, I hope, from looking at the exam, we're never trying to trick you or do anything mean. I'm just really trying to test in over all the questions, all the different things. One question on this, one question on that, one question on this, touching on all the things we've asked you to do, all the things I want you to do, all the skills I want you to have. So everything's tested somewhere at least once is what I'm trying to do. And I'm not trying to be mean or trick anyone. And if you've just done a reasonable amount of work in the course, you should be able to blitz the exam. And blitz the exam doesn't mean you come out thinking you've done well. You always come out being a bit depressed after an exam. But then when you get your mark, you go, woohoo! Can't believe how well I did. Because if you're good like me, you'll always, if you have, I think, a healthy approach to life like me, you're always thinking the worst of things. So I think that's a good approach for a security person. So you'll probably be super critical of your answer because you want it to be fantastic and it won't be as fantastic as you wanted. And that's a great thing to have, though it will make you slightly depressed in the period after you've done the exam until you get your mark back. So what attacks is something defending against? And the reason I would have said that is the article probably said is talking about some elaborate thing someone's doing, and it doesn't bother to address why they're doing it. And probably reading that article, I thought, I bet no one's even wondered why they're doing this. We just suddenly had a brain bubble that this would be a good thing to do, and they're trying to work out the best, cheapest way of doing it. But what the heck problem are they actually trying to solve? So, so there's an actual question on that. And then essentially, yeah, I'm saying what would be protected by it, what wouldn't be protected by it. The sorts of questions that reading that article, I probably thought, I bet in 5 years' time, they wish they'd asked these sorts of questions before they spend all this money, because they'll now just be attacked by these other ways. What are the main factors in favour of Australia doing it? What are the main factors of Australia not doing it? What's your recommendation? Should Australia do this? Yes or no? Marks are for reasoning, not your particular recommendations. And then explain your reasoning for making this recommendation. Oh, it's a long question. Well, it's 30 marks. If you explain yes, explain with reasons how you'd implement such a system within your $100 million budget. If you said no, give reasons, the main alternatives you recommend to protect the security of the government with your $100 million budget. So now here, I'm not expecting you to be an expert on money and things, but I want the $100 million as a size. It just gives you an idea of what you're capable of doing. And I don't care if you get the prices wrong, even within a factor of 2 is fine, as long as they're reasonable. I just want to see that you can make sensible decisions at that order of magnitude of decision. So you can't say every Australian needs to have you know, a barbed wire fence built around their house. You wouldn't be able to afford to do that with that money. But similarly, you can do more than just building an app, which is these days, I think, the normal reaction to any situation is to build an app. But you've probably got more money. You've got money to do. I'm not making fun of COVID Safe, by the way. It's just a general observation that we've had for years, that as soon as anyone sees a problem, I just sit there waiting. 1, 2, 3. And then someone will say, we could build an app. It's very funny. I'm not making fun of the COVID Safe app, though. I mean, there's lots of good reasons for having that. Question 12. What are the following flawed communication protocols? Zero knowledge proof. You know this. Oh, yeah, I asked you this puzzle in class, didn't I? How could you do a zero knowledge proof that you know the solution to a Sudoku puzzle, or even how to pronounce Sudoku? And here's a particular solution that someone came up with, and what are the problems with it? I don't think we did enough time on it to do that. And now I've run out of patience, but luckily I think we've reached the end of the thing. So that took way too long, but you've gone through a whole exam together. Was that a useful thing to do?
If you scroll down slightly further to the the very end.
Oh, is there another question? The very, very end?
Yeah, the decipher. The spacing's kind of odd. Like literally the second last line.
Oh, the second last line.
Above your answer, you have the decipher this message.
Yes.
The spacing is like not by word, and there was a question in my tute that never got answered, which was either do all the words in this expression happen to have the same spacing, or is this space independent?
It's a different
No.
cipher.
Haven't we given you lots of ciphers to do? Normally you break ciphers into chunks of 5. In the old days, that's what they did with pen and paper.
Right, okay.
Chunks of 5 or 4. I'm sorry if I haven't given you
misunderstanding
the
Richard,
Richard,
intention of the question.
Yeah.
That question in particular wasn't a substitution cipher.
No. It was probably something.
It was another kind of cipher that I'm not sure we've touched on in the course this year.
Oh, no, we have.
We have?
Yeah. Okay. In fact,
yes, Harrison, that's right.
Cipher sort of gives it away what it was. Yeah, that's right. But normally when you're trying to break a code, the code breakers write the message down in these chunks. I'm not sure why. I think it's just because it was pen and paper days and they didn't want to lose track of where they were. But also it makes it very easy to count things on if you want, because often you're interested in intervals and things like that when you're doing the old codes and ciphers. So I could quickly work out what letter was 26 on from this if they're 5 long. Some years I'm a bit sneaky and I break it into chunks of 4 or 6. And if I've ever done that rather than 5, this is like a little side channel thing you can do to attack me. It's probably because I'm doing that to help you. If I've done that, it's made bits line up that I want to line up. So maybe something jumps out at you, or maybe you're trying to find the period of something if it's a Vignere cipher and the periods are multiple of 4 or 6, and this just makes it. So sometimes I do that. I haven't set the cipher question this year, so I don't know if I'm going to do that or not, but there's a little hint. So sometimes I won't always use collections of 5, but that's the traditional way of doing it. So that's all. And yeah, that's all. Yeah, that was a good question, Oliver. But I'm pretty sure there's some deciphering exercises in the first few weeks of the course. You should, if
my hand is
and not let me know.
For your time.
I'm thinking.
A little
Yeah, let me know if there's not. But if there are, I reckon everyone should do them because it's fun to do those old classic ciphers, and it might well be in the exam because it's a sort of question I can ask easily and get you to do some work, and that you'll probably be able to solve. And whereas cracking a modern cipher is much harder. I couldn't get you to do that in the exam period. Okay, and now, are there any more questions about this before I return to the general thing that we're talking about? Then what I want to talk about generally is, are there any topics that you're really worried about you'd like me to revise? And is there anything you're completely panicking about that you utterly hate that you'd really like me to tell you is not in the exam? But you only get like 1 or 2 of those, so don't use them up. They're like those wishes. Did you ever read that story where someone got 3 wishes and her first wish was to make her husband's nose the sausage? And he got really cross, or he made her nose the sausage, and they only had 2 wishes left? It's the best story ever. So much of life is like that. I often think that when people have a small number of chances and they blow the first one, I often imagine a picture of turning someone's nose into a sausage. Such a bad waste of a wish.
I was also wondering, like, how about 6441 students getting like 1 or 2 choices? Like, if there are some particular topic really not comfortable on.
I will mark everything generously, I promise. And normally the total number of marks for the exam adds up to more than the total number of marks. So you can bomb out on something and you still get there. I don't want to give you an optional question because I actually think it's a curse. I don't think I'm helping you by doing that. Let me make the correction at my end. I'm such a generous marker and I max marks out really quickly. So, yeah, so please let me do, I know it would seem like a benefit to give it to you, but I reckon you will spend so long agonizing about it. And I bet at the end, half of you will have tried all of the questions just to see if you can do better on one than another, and you'll have wasted time. And is that all right? So just assume there'll be 1 or 2 questions you have no clue on and you're just doing a Hail Mary pass and writing some rubbish and hoping we don't notice. Assume everyone does that. So the whole thing's really marked out of 13 questions. Imagine that sort of thing. What do you think of that?
Hey, Richard, I had a question as well.
Yeah, just before I answer that, can I just say one more thing? Because I should say, how I mark the exam is we mark everything, and some questions that we think are important questions that test certain hard skills, we mark harder. And some questions we think are general, we mark easier. And each marker and I have a little discussion about whether it's a hard mark question or an easy mark question. And we use that just to spread everyone out. And then at the end, we get the number that all marks add up to. That is not the number that you get for the exam. That's just us ranking everyone from the exam. And then we spend bloody ages going over the exam, working out where the pass mark is. And the pass mark is basically finding a paper and saying, it's pretty clear this student didn't understand the course. And then finding a paper and going, this student got a lot of questions wrong, but look here, this is a good answer. This student really did understand the course. And we agonize around the pass-fail mark for quite a long time. And at some point we go, this paper is the one. This is the lowest passing paper. And this one next to it, this is the highest failing paper. And then I rescale everything to make that 50. So the actual number you get from adding up all the questions has nothing to do with the final number you get. We work out pass and fail based on whether so that way, if we accidentally set a hard course an exam one year, it's not that everyone gets lower marks. And if we accidentally send these, yeah. And then similarly, the only other one I care about is the distinction between high distinction and distinction. So we then spend ages agonizing, is this a high distinction sort of answer? And we look at it and then we go, boom, this is where we're putting distinction and high distinction. And then normally it's just a linear scaling over the whole thing then to make that work. This year,
you don't have to do that this year.
Well, no, this year we're still going to go for didn't we say we'll go for something awesome or something? We will have a grade that I'll agonize over to say which are the exams that are awesome. And there'll be, 20 or 30 exams that are awesome. And I'll know that. And if you ever ask me, I'll tell you, but it won't appear on your transcript. But that's just for my own satisfaction to do that. Yeah, but this year it's just pass fail. Yes, so just to reassure you that adding up all the marks means nothing. And everyone will bomb out on at least 2 questions. You're super tech, you'll mix some of the human ones. You're super good at the human stuff, you'll miss some of the tech ones. Everyone has holes. No one's perfect. Everyone's going to bomb out in 2 questions. That entirely gets ignored when we do our scaling process. We're just picking the fail point and we're picking the awesome point. Yep. And sorry, I interrupted someone who was saying something.
I just had a quick question. I think the only thing that I was a little confused about is like the list of topics. Like, is there can we use the modules online as like a a safe list of topics to go off, because that's basically what I've been doing.
Oh, yeah, the modules online and the things covered in the lectures and the exercises in the tutorials.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's not the case that the modules online cover, I mean, really, they're almost complementary. The things we covered in the tutorials normally aren't covered in the lectures. The things we cover in the lectures normally aren't covered in the tutorials, except a little bit, unless your tutor wanted to revise something because you had a question. And the things online are often completely different skills that we want you to get that we don't have time to talk about in the lectures. So understand all those three. And if you look at this past exam, you'll see it's got bits from them all. It's got a couple of coding, ciphering and deciphering things that would have been from the exercises. It's got some making decisions and judgments that would have been from the lectures. Would have been from the tutorials, and it's got some analyzing through some protocols and things like that that would have come from the lectures.
Cool.
Is that a helpful answer?
Yeah, definitely makes sense.
Is there like a syllabus anywhere, like a long list of all the topics?
No, but you guys are welcome to write one if you want. If you wrote a list of all the things you learnt in the course, which should be what the course notes are, if you wrote that list, that would be awesome. And if you ever wanted me to make comments on it, I would. Yeah. But every year we do slightly different things. So, I mean, everything we've done in class is in the notes, should be in the notes. And everything you've done in the online exercises in the exercises. Is there a summary of that somewhere? It's not really a good summary of it. But if anyone wanted to, that's fine. And also, thank you, Richard Buckland. And if anyone wanted to ask a question, sometimes people say, I can't stand zero knowledge protocols and you only touched them really briefly this year. Is that in the exam? Then that could be your sausage nose. And I could say yes or no. And then you'd know not to study a whole topic. Do you guys have any things you want that you desperately want to know are or aren't in the exam?
Yeah, can we be directly assessed on module content? Like, for example, the OWASP 10 vulnerabilities, which wasn't really touched on in lectures or tutes. That was kind of just standalone as a module.
Yeah, anything in the modules, we expect you to have done all the modules. That's right. Obviously, we can't go into great detail. We can't go into any more detail than you did in the modules. I did cover them in one lecture and did mention that I wanted you to read them and know them. So they were sort of flagged in a lecture. But
okay, right.
But yeah, I'm expecting everyone's done all the modules, all the tutes, and all the lectures. And if there's anything in it that's not in those, it could only be something that everyone would be approaching with fresh eyes, not knowing. And it would be you analyzing some new situation that's completely new to everyone.
Yep, all right, sounds good.
It doesn't sound good. It sounds stressful to you. I can see from the sound of your voice. But it actually, when you do the exam, I think you'll find that it's okay. Normally people get quite anxious before the exam, and then when they come out of the exam, well, how did you feel when you came out of the exam, Chris? Do you remember when you did it? Actually, I chatted to you when you came out, didn't I? I remember.
I don't remember that, but I do remember feeling fairly confident about most of it, but I actually remember a couple of questions that I didn't do well in. Particularly the practical stuff. I remember I couldn't get the format strings, but I got the buffer overflows. That was my exam.
Yes. And the things you didn't do well in, I'm guessing you will never forget that you didn't do well in them?
No, I've forgotten most of them. I sort of, because I enjoyed this course so much and I knew that security was where I wanted to go, I sort of just went back and relearned the stuff. Again, it was that time to know what I didn't know, such that I could set myself up to progress further.
Yes. I remember marking your paper, and it was a very good paper.
Oh, excellent. Yes, I still remember the question about how to perform the social engineering attack.
Oh yeah, we should talk about that. We're going to do don't say any more now.
Okay.
But there will be a question on social engineering, and I have picked the target if you want to know who it is. But it'll be in the skeleton of the exam so you can see it. It's words I won't censor out. But can I say, if anyone's going to do any investigation, you don't have to, but if anyone does any investigation on this person before the exam, please don't get me into trouble. So don't do anything intrusive, or I'm not expecting anything, don't go to their house or peer in their window or steal their stuff or stalk them online or anything that could get me into trouble. Because I could so get into trouble for this. But the person I'm going to want you to trick in this exam Oh, I've got to ask him.
Ian Jacobs.
No, I've never done. Oh no, I did Ian Jacobs one year. But I'm going to ask this person and get his okay. But I'm 99% sure he's going to laugh and say yes. So let me say who I think it is now, but don't take it as gospel that this is the person until you see the skeleton exam, is the head of cybersecurity at UNSW. So there will be a question where we ask you to social engineer him in some way.
Wait, that isn't Richard Buckland?
It's certainly not Richard Buckland. The guy that works in IT. So yeah, the guy that looks after the UNSW security budget and makes all the security decisions about how we spend money and stops us getting hacked, who's actually a really nice guy. So that was a good thing to say to everyone. And Adam, do you have anything to add that's obvious that I've missed?
Remind me the topic.
No. In today, you're just eating pizza and having fun. I'm so jealous. It's how life is when you don't have an exam in a couple of weeks. It's
living the life.
It is living the life. But I know you work exceptionally. Is that your dog in the background?
Yeah, exactly. That's Holly. She's having lots of fun.
What advice would you give to students just before an exam, given that we've got less than -5 minutes to go?
Yeah, I think that if you attended all the tutorials, you probably have a really good grasp on what like analytical thinking is. And I'd read over them. I'd spend half an hour reading over all of them, but I kind of considered it, if I engaged in them and I discussed in them, which most people did, then that's pretty well covered. Revise the topics. I mean, I always say that that it's useful to not know facts and know statistics and data about stuff. Richard's exams or your exams are always about applying the knowledge and understanding how it works and things like that. But yeah, I'd say they're just fun. They're fun exams to do. And I myself, like you were saying, I walked out of it thinking, oh, I got this one wrong, this one. And they still haunt me to this day, the questions. And you're actually going through my paper. The paper that you went through today was my paper. But, you know, the marks, you get pleasantly surprised when the marks come out.
Which one did you like the least from, or not like the least, which one do you think you did worst on in today's exam?
I'm a suck at cryptography. So even when I was helping some students through it, I was like, I don't know, I'm going to have to sit with this one. But I did enjoy the fingerprint one. That's just, and it's exactly right. Like the thinking process is really the joy of doing these exams. And it's frustrating because almost this exam is unlike any CSE exam or potentially university exam you've done. But 100% when you get out into the workforce, you get hired as a security expert, and they don't give you a clear and neat mathematical problem that you need to solve. They just go, I don't know, is the COVID-19 app secure? And I've got that question 15 times this week. And you just have to do all the reasonable assumptions and stating those assumptions. So if you've been doing that, you probably don't realize you've been doing it. If you've been going to tutorials and engaging in that and thinking about questions and writing your blogs and putting effort in, then you've probably got a lot of that base knowledge there. So just browse over your notes, browse over the course notes. And if you don't know about a thing, investigate it. And yeah.
And talk to your peers as well. Like I know there's a messenger chat and the Slack channel and open learning. The reason we use the platform is so that you can talk to your peers, but like actually discuss, like go through and debate things, like play devil's advocate sometimes. Just go. The best way to interact and see things from another perspective is to talk to somebody with another perspective. So that will give you better insights into what's going on in the security field. I know there's a lot of us here that are very, very privacy oriented, and there are other people here who are very much open to having, data published as long as it keeps them secure. So you're going to get a lot of various inputs. So like talk to your peers. There's a reason why the cohort is so large. Like we want people engaging.
And I'll say this as well. If you're worrying about the exam that like you're in there and you're getting a question that's really tough, just think that well, probably everyone else in the exam is getting this question and thinking the same way. And you don't have to give the best answer in the world. And if it's a topic you've never heard of or seen before, all you need to do is just give a reasonably good answer that's kind of maybe better than the other answers we see, and they're going to naturally be the better answers. So you don't have to be, God's gift to the security world. Just give it a red hot go. Use those analytical skills. Cannot state that enough. Think through the problem. And Richard, it was mentioned during the lecture, but this session, but I'll mention it again, that our temptation is just to write the answers and go done and dusted. And I have a feeling that most people won't be short of time in this exam. And I guess you need to decide whether you're going to run out of time, so you need to rush, or whether you can slowly, carefully think about your answers. But I suspect most people, because you've got the bonus hour, most people are going to be in the category where you'll finish this exam in time. And my recommendation with that time, like your primary school teacher said, to go back and check your answers. I actually remember distinctively doing this, and I said this in my tutorial. I remember sitting and doing this exact exam and seeing, you can kind of see other people's screens, and they're further ahead on questions than me. And I was thinking, gee, I must be really slow. But what I was doing is I was sitting there, I'd write down all my thoughts as they came to my head, brainstorm. And then I'd sit there and I'd read it back and I'd think, oh, is that the best way of describing it? And I rewrote sentences 3 or 4 times. Obviously, if you're running out of time, manage your time well. But I had the time and I was rewriting them again and again. And I'd sit there and prioritize them and think, oh, how can I tweak this? Can I explain this in a simpler, better way? In fewer words, not more. And I think that's absolutely critical when it comes to marking it. Richard mentioned it, and I'm glad you said it because I didn't want to give it away, but often the first recommendation, the second recommendation, that's nearly 50% of your marks. So those that were just wrote an answer and thought like halfway through the answer, oh, this is a brilliant one, I'll put that down too, and it's down at the bottom. Well, if you didn't pause and do that thinking and reflecting and prioritize it, even rewriting it, then you just get less on marks for that. So I think most people will be okay. It'll be okay. And it's all scaled. So if you're worried about your marks and your numbers, I wouldn't worry too much. But yeah, if you give it a red hot go this semester and you engaged in class and analytical thinking, you're probably it's gonna turn out well for you in terms of your marks as well. So if you work really hard, you might I was saying this to my class, you might turn your pass into a pass. So I think if that's the worst case scenario, most people are in a good position.
Yes, thank you, Adam. I'd like to repeat what Adam said, that we are just marking, you're going to get a pass-fail in this course. You're going to have to try quite hard not to pass the course. So there is no reason, I know you've all been programmed to be so stressed coming up to exam. This is the one time it's like a party. You just do the best you can, and this, more than any other time before an exam that I've seen, is a time you can just learn more stuff and become better. View it as a chance to get better and as a personal challenge, but you'll just pass. So it doesn't, it doesn't really matter. And in terms of marks, I'll generate an internal mark for you. The uni is very reluctant for us to share these marks, so I'll have to work out sneaky ways of sharing them with you. But as far as I'm concerned, you're getting a number for this course if you need it. And if you ever needed me to write you a reference in the future, I can say things like, in the top 10% of the course, and, I can do all that sort of stuff. And I'm very happy to show anyone their mark. And we're always happy to go over anyone's exam with anyone at any time, because it's a good way of learning how you went. But please don't bombard us straight after the exam period, because it's quite stressful then. So just view it as a learning experience. And what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh yeah, Adam, I just remembered actually your exam had some really remarkable, I'm thinking you might have actually come top. Did you come top in your year?
I don't think so, but it was somebody's, I don't know how someone found my mark, but it's in the chat. I did reasonably well, and I was exactly that. I was like, oh, did I pass this course? Did I get a credit or whatever? And it was, I did reasonably well.
I think you did. And what I always do when I'm marking is if I see an answer, so we always mark completely anonymously. We don't know who anyone is when we're marking. That's really important. But, and we do all sorts of funny randomization things that a lot of other courses don't do. Like, for example, if your name is later in the alphabet, you actually do better normally than if your name's earlier in the alphabet, because because you're really hard when you start marking. And then after you've marked the first couple of hundred, you're worn down to a little nub of and you just go, oh, yeah, anything's all right. So, so we have a rule that we just start marking at a random position in the alphabet or in the student number sequence, and then we wrap around and go to the other end. And then when we get to the other end, when we get back to the beginning, we resume marking the ones we marked the first time through, and we keep going until the new marks we're assigning match the marks we gave before, if that makes sense. So, you know, we're really careful to give accurate marks because we want you to be proud. We want you to get the mark you deserve. In this case, it would be a pass. But the thing that I do, one of the things that I love most about marking is sometimes I see an answer and I go, oh my God, that's brilliant. And as soon as I do that, I go back and look who you are straight away. So because I've already handed the mark out, I can't change it. And I go, oh, wow, that was Gaia 3. Wow, look at, she did this. That's amazing. And so I actually, when the tutors are talking now, I'm very fond of lots of people because I've actually thought a lot about you. And when I've marked one of your questions, I've looked it over and gone, oh, that's Adam. Oh, that Adam Smallhorn, he's remarkable. Or look what Lachlan did. And always, of course, look what Chris did. Chris is a legend. And so many of you just blow me away. And even people that have been shy throughout the lectures that I've not been sure have been following along or how engaged they were, there'll be just some question, they blow me away and I go, wow, that's amazing. So do make sure you come and look at your exam afterwards somehow, because I think that'll improve your future exams you do. And do make sure you hunt me down and work out a way of getting your mark. I will try and get the mark to anyone who wants it, subject to not breaking any uni rules, subject to trying to be as sneaky as possible and not really talk about what we're doing as much as possible. So don't dog me in. But we'll try and get anyone that needs a mark. That's absolutely fine. But in terms of passing and failing, I just think this is a time for everyone to relax. You would have to have not actually come to anything or done anything to be in danger of.
Richard?
Yeah.
How is this course working in terms of prerequisite marks for the future security courses?
So yeah, so we'll assign everyone a mark, and my hope is that we'll use those nominal marks we gave everyone. If some of the harder courses we have a prereq a WAM limit. Now, the WAM limit's never hard. You can always overcome it with other evidence. You just make a case. You say, oh yeah, I got a bad mark in this course, but look, I went and did this online course and I've done this and I've found this vulnerability, or I've got this home project, and you just mount a case and then we can waive entry. But so I suspect this time we'll have to do that a little bit more because the marks will be less fine-grained than normal. But we will, my intent is, and I believe Lisa set it up so we can do it, is when people apply to do later courses and they don't have a mark for this course, it's just a pass-fail. I think we've made the later courses need lecturer consent. If Lisa's online, she can confirm that. And then we'll just at one point look at all the people that have applied. We've got all the marks for them and we'll work out if they're in or not.
Okay.
So
I have actually like a couple of things to share with all of us. So about OWASP Top 10, I had done like something awesome project in OWASP Top 10. And it's really like very simplified language and anyone can read and understand what it is. So you guys can go ahead and look at that. And,
can you post a link to that on the exam page?
Oh yeah, I will add that. I just pasted that in the chat as well. Mm-hmm. And another thing is in our last tutorial lecture, in our last tutorial, we had kind of like revision quick, like we listed out what we learned throughout the course. And like we have a good list we have a good master list, and I think anybody could jump in and if they want to edit, update.
Is it a Google Doc or something?
Yes. So,
can you post a link to that on the exam page too? Let's put all the exam prep stuff on the exam page. That sounds fantastic.
Okay, yeah, I think that might be helpful to everyone. And I've got like a couple of questions to ask. Where can we access these recordings of these like Zoom videos? Because I think we only have the ones.
They stopped going up. That's probably me. I'm getting mailed whenever they're processed, and I must just have stopped. And then I download them and upload them to YouTube. I must have stopped doing that. I think I got a copyright strike on one, and suddenly I thought I had to do some editing, and that paused. So I'm sorry about that. I'll fix that up. That's probably quite urgent, isn't it? I don't think it's as urgent as getting the exam paper finished so I can get it out to people to look at. So. How urgent is it? Give me a clue. Should I do that top priority tomorrow? Because I have a few
There's
gaps.
someone who's recorded a lot of them
Yes,
separately. I don't know if they've recorded this one,
I'll get this
I
one.
actually can't remember who it was, but someone's been recording something.
I'll post this one straight
I
away.
think his name was Brendan, and he said that he wanted. Yeah, there we go. He wanted to record it, so he might be.
Are you recording it, Brendan?
It's being recorded right now. It says recording at the top left.
Oh, yeah. So what happens is at the end of this, we click enter, and then sometime tomorrow or maybe even tonight, depending on the load at Zoom, I get an email saying, here's a link to your recording where you can download it. And then I download it, but then I have to re-upload it to, thank you. I'm sure there's a
I think if we could just upload, like, even though we would not be able to like play it online, we can download it and watch it.
Yeah. So I can do that. That's not hard to do. And I will make sure this one gets, I think this is useful to everyone. I think what did I say in it that was naughty? I said, I'm going to try and get marks to everyone no matter what. So I'm on screen saying that. So please don't point to any link.
Richard, if YouTube is a problem, would you be able to upload the raw video files to OneDrive or something?
Sure.
You can also use the box, which is what the uni wants people to use.
Ah.
It's their solution for uploading media files.
Ah. Okay. Well, I'm happy to do all these things.
Yeah, I've got one last question.
Yes.
So I might have missed that, but how do we ask questions during the exam time?
Oh yeah, I'll put something on the page, but I'm going to I'll have an exam page. It's an open learning page about the exam that will open at the beginning, where I'll make announcements and you can ask questions at the bottom. So there's an Exam Central page. So I'll just sit there watching that the whole time, clicking refresh. And I know people have made other suggestions about how to do it, but I think that's possibly the simplest way. But I'll also have I'll have the email open somehow, though I'm not sure if I get all those emails, Lisa. We'll have to work out a way I can get them. But so I'll be watching email too, and I'll just be sitting there the whole time you're doing it.
Yeah. I don't want to complicate this, but sometimes it's really handy to if we could just talk to someone and to understand the question.
Oh yeah, but ask. I don't mind if you ask openly, and then if I answer it, I can explain it to everyone. I quite like that. Or you want to have a chat sort of thing.
Yeah, I was thinking about chat, like maybe calling our tutor or someone.
Oh.
Slack.
I just really want to. We just have to be careful because it has to be a read-only exam. So if you have a private conversation with someone, we just need to have a way.
Maybe just.
Is it give me an example of the sort of question you might ask?
No, I mean, if some question is unclear and like one minute chat might clarify things up.
Yes.
Normally they're pretty strict on what questions you can ask in the exam room of the people. It's like if you can't read the words on the page or something, then maybe they can help you because of like an English issue. Actually, not even then. I don't think they ever read. They'll just ask you to read the question to them and then they'll repeat it back to you and hope that helps.
But I'm normally a bit sneaky, Oliver, because I normally run my own exams and I walk around during the exams handing out lollies to everyone. And if anyone has a question, often they put their hand up and they'll say, what do you mean by this? And I'll say, what do you mean? What do I mean by that? And they'll say, you mean this or that? And I go, I mean that. Of course it means that. Oh yeah, it is a bit unclear, isn't it? And then I'll call up the phone and all the tutors in all the rooms will say to everyone, hey, by the way, in this question here, this means that. And everyone knows. So we normally are a little bit more chatty. I think maybe
tutor.
I don't think you should ask your tutor. I think it should probably go through me. I just think there's this slight danger if there's little side conversations going on. Some people might get information others wouldn't, or feel that they might, and that might be. I think ask the question, and if it's a real problem, email me your phone number and I'll give you a call or something, because I'll have this exam phone that I'll be using and I can talk it through. What do you think? Or I'll have a Zoom session open. What do you think of that? Yeah. All right.
I have a quick question that's not about the exam,
Oliver,
but on the
Tom has a question too after you. Yep.
On the open learning course outline, it talks about there's some 20% worth for actually doing the activities on how is that graded? Is it if you have the tick at the top, is that you've done all the activities, or is it more detailed than that?
No, I think Lachlan's generating a mark from that, and I'm pretty sure we're just doing a naive thing of taking the percentage completed as your mark.
Okay, so okay, that's fine. So tick at the top of the page means you've done whatever you needed to do.
Yeah, you just want that bar to be. Is that right, Trash Panda?
I'm not the admin here.
Why? I just saw you laughing. I wondered if I'd said something wrong.
Because Caps joins per video and then realized conversation continued and then disconnected video.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Thank you.
So we're using the naive version?
Is that right? Am I right?
Yes.
Okay.
Woo! Really, we just, I mean, we could drill down closer, but the idea is in your portfolio, you're talking about all the awesome things you've done. So it's like an attendance mark if you're doing law.
And another question that was echoed in the chat here was, are we likely to get the marks back for the job application just from either a personal curiosity perspective or
you'll get the grade back.
Okay.
I normally do it, and the tutors, I'm hoping, will tell you the grades as soon as they've done them. I do normally have a thing that you shouldn't tell anyone a grade within a few days of an exam, because if it's a grade that disappoints them, it can put them into a bad state of mind for the exam. So best to withhold. But and your tutors are, of course, in many cases, students who are studying now too and have all sorts of constraints. The final marks for that isn't due until I'm not sure when it is. I should speak to Lachlan. So they have the ability to not mark it all straight away, but some of them will have marked some of them already and got them out of the way. And as soon as they know the marks, they can release them to you. And by marks, I just mean grade. And do you remember the grades we're giving for them? I'm pretty sure, again, it's just pass, fail, or awesome. Is that it for each category?
Yeah, satisfactory, and then there's a 8 out of 10 and then an 11 out of 10.
Yeah, we always have 11, which is a reference to Spinal Tap, which means it's so amazing it even explodes the normal scaling system. And there'll be one or two people in each category that sometimes get it. Someone that just does something so amazing you just can't believe it. But just assume that they don't exist, the 11s. So there's an amazing grade for things that are just completely outstanding. And they're the ones we'll show to people next year as examples. And then there's just, completely fine, absolutely normal. We're really proud of you. You did a great job, which 99.9% of people will get. And you should, as soon as we know that, we'll tell you, and you'll be able to find it out too. You'll be able to look it up, presumably online, using whatever the normal ways are, Class Run Collect or whatever the normal way of getting marks. You should be able to get all those grades. But they won't be very interesting. They'll presumably just be pass, 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 awesome pass, that sort of thing. But your tutor, when they're marked up, will make comments and things. And when they tell you, they'll probably tell you what they were really proud of. So that's the main thing. Yeah.
Richard, I had another question. I think there was conflicting information on how much each of the sections was worth. So I think it's you said 20 for all the coursework. What about the rest of it?
It's 20, 40, 40 is my recollection. Lachlan is much better at details than me. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
20, 40, 40. Exams worth 40, 20 for the progress bar, 40 for the portfolio. 40 for the portfolio is broken over 5 sections, including the something awesome. Yep. So they're worth 8 marks each. And it is possible, if you got the 11, to get more for that. It's possible to get bonus marks if you're in the Hall of Fame. And it's possible to get bonus marks if you do an amazing exam. Or if you bribe me. I'm completely open to bribes. So yeah, go for it. That's a joke. It's not a joke. Are there any more questions?
How much is a bribe?
It's not possible to bribe me. I'm already too happy. You're making me happy already just by being awesome, guys. That's the bribe. You've bribed me already. Just ask nicely and look. Everyone will be fine. Everything will be good. If you're feeling stressed for this course, we've done something wrong, or you're being too stressed. Think, oh, am I too stressed a person? Because really, right now, you're heading for a pass, unless you've actually been completely willfully negligent throughout the course. You're heading for a pass. So just think happily now about how well you've gone and plan what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And think of poor Richard and all the tutors doing all this exam marking while you're on lying on your couch looking at a picture of the Bahamas. Yeah. Now who's laughing? So are there any more questions about anything at all before we finish? I have offered to rule out something being in the exam and no one's taken me up. So
what's not in the exam?
Yes. What's not in the exam? No, ask me a specific question. I'm just hoping that someone really worried about something and we can rule out them spending any time studying it. Shaman.
Just to clarify, is that one per person?
Hang on a second.
Do you want to do that as a class?
So personally, I'm worried about the entire exam, but I was going to ask the same thing as I don't really know your name, zero knowledge proof, because I was very confused about, I understand the concept, but I I struggled with doing the exercise, with entirely what to do about the Sudoku puzzle.
It was pretty tricky.
Yeah, but it was very nicely explained, Adam. So thank you for that.
Adam,
thank you to your dog.
All right, so I'll answer that, but so I'm only going to answer two things. So this is one of them. I'm only going to say it once, so listen closely. In terms of zero knowledge protocol.
Did we just get pranked?
I can't believe I told you that, but I'm really glad.
I hate it here. No, I'm kidding. This is so fun.
Yeah.
Well,
isn't there something somewhere about like cruel and unusual punishment?
We're a serious institution here, guys.
Australia.
I'm so happy. I'm going to sleep well tonight.
The meaning of life is
we have the right to vote, and our options are Richard or Richard.
I hate that I fell for that, and I was like, "Oh damn, what happened to his camera?"
People aren't hearing enough. There is no zero knowledge question in it. I wrote one, but I just felt I hadn't spent enough time on it because we rushed it at the end of one lecture, and I was going to pick it up at the beginning of the next, and we had something else to do. I wished I'd done more because they're really beautiful. I was fooling around with a really simple one that just relied you knowing the definition of zero knowledge, and I'd give you a protocol and ask you what knowledge could you get from this, but it just got to be too messy, so I dropped the whole question. So there's nothing on that. So you don't have to learn it for the exam, but you should learn it for life. They're so beautiful, zero knowledge protocols. They really are.
Yes, they're very nice, definitely.
Yes. I remember when I got into security at the beginning, and it was because of Bruce Schneier's book, Applied Cryptography. I just stumbled across it one day. This must have been shortly after he'd written it. And I was just reading through some of the protocols. I couldn't believe them. Like distributed coin flip, which I gave into you. I was just going, how can you do this? It's something out of nothing. This is magic. And then I got to the bit about zero knowledge protocols and I nearly threw up. It was so amazing. I just thought, what is this field? I need to know all about this. And so zero knowledge protocols, you've learned them and they'll make you happy. But no, I'm not going to test you on them in the exam.
That Sudoku exercise was interesting.
Yeah, it is so interesting. That's right. I think we set that as an exam one year, and then the next year it was sort of on Reddit and people solved it in a slightly different way. But I think we came up with that question first. But anyway, but I think the solution on Reddit was better than mine because they collapsed 2 steps into one or something. So it was quite nice. But anyway.
And where are your solutions?
Oh, you can just look for one on Reddit for that one. Though I didn't know write a solution for that or not. I never like giving solutions. So I often write solutions but don't hand them out because I figure people look at solutions and then they stop learning. So I like you grappling and trying to work it out. If there's anything you need a solution to that I've not given you, contact me privately and I'll explain anything you ever want ever. But I don't really want to make an online or recorded version of anything because I just think future students, when it gets hard, they'll go and look at the answer. And I quite like that we have questions that are unusual on the internet that you can't look up the answer. I'll be sad if you can never look up the answer to a Houdini problem.
Can we add ciphertext for the exam?
Yeah, I'm certainly intending to. I'm fooling around with a couple at the moment. But yeah, I love giving people a ciphertext and getting them to solve it. And one last one. So think carefully before you use it up.
I'm not sure if I should say that, but like I'm a little scared about like bits of security stuff and guessing, just like Laura said that in the beginning of the lecture. Like I haven't really understood that part, and I get really confused when you say like 50% of the time. I don't know. 50% of the time you get like how to guess the number, like the other person gets in 50%.
Oh, I think what you're talking about now is when we were talking about entropy, and that was bits of information, not bits of security. So do you want me to do a super fast revision of that now? And anyone that has, why don't we see if there's any more questions that are quick? Then 99% of the people can go, and then anyone wants a revision on bits of security or bits of information, we can do a little session on that. Would that be a useful thing to do? Yeah. So let's just see, are there any more questions though? Is there something you guys would like to rule out being in the exam?
Richard, I would like to ask one question.
Yoda.
So besides Merkle puzzle and let's say bits of security,
yes.
What should I focus on in terms of the technical questions?
Oh, okay. Let me look at the questions.
Richard, can you just hold them up a bit higher?
Okay, so there's something on hashing. There's something on solving something like the NSA. You remember the NSA app?
Yeah.
Something like doing something like that, doing a simple cryptanalysis.
Okay.
Which you'd need a dictionary for, or be able to use grep or something like that.
Oh,
Does everyone know how to use? I mean, that would help you. Does everyone know how to use grep or and have a dictionary? Does anyone not know what I'm talking about if I say the word grep?
Is this for 6441 or 68 and 6441?
This would help you for both. You can just solve it using normal English, but I find
what's grep or grap or whatever you said.
Yeah, Oliver, grep is a program that lets you search for words that have a particular pattern. So if you go, oh, I need a 6-letter word that's got L in the second place and V in the 5th place, you'd use grep and it would tell you all those words. Now, you don't need to use grep if you've not used it. There are online sites that tell you that for people that do crossword puzzles.
Like regex.
Yeah, it's a regex scan. Yeah. So if one good thing you could do to practice would be to find a crossword puzzle site where you could type in a pattern and it would tell you all words that match the pattern.
Oh, yeah. There are
all 6-letter words that have 2 E's in positions 4 and 5. Do you think you could find a site like that, Oliver?
Yeah, I think it's called like Crossword Puzzle Solver or something like that.
There's lots of.
I'll give it a go or teach myself how to use grep. One of the two.
Okay, and if you can't, then post on the exam page, and I or someone else will work harder to find a solution for you. Yeah. Grep is fun to use, though.
Cheers.
So I already said that. There's one that looks like one of the technical exercises you do in the modules. I don't want to say more than that, but if you've done the technical exercises from the early weeks in the modules, there's one that looks a bit like one of those.
Okay.
And then there's one about bits of information or bits of security. And they're the only technical ones that are in the list at the moment. Now, it might be that when I pass the exam to the scrutineers, they think some of my questions are ridiculous, too hard or something like that, and I have to think of new questions, and I might slip something else in. I don't know what will happen then. But at the moment, I went through a slightly wider list than the total number of questions I'm using, because I've got a couple of spares, and they were the only technical questions that I hadn't previously mentioned.
Okay, Richard, thank you so much.
No worries. So that was good. Good. That was a very good last question. That was sort of like, you know, when they say, that's what you should do for your third wish. You say, oh, can I have 1 million wishes?
Or 1 million genies.
Yeah, well, that was it. I was going to say that. You said that punchline. Can I tell you the joke line, which is if they say you rub the bottle and a genie comes out and he says, I'll give you 3 wishes. And you say, oh, can I have 1 million bottles? This is the punchline that Michael already knows. You say, can I have 1 million bottles? And he says, no way, you can't have 1 million bottles. Sorry, you can't have 1 million wishes. You can't have wishes about wishes. You know, that's not possible. And then the person goes, oh, can I have 1 million bottles then? 1 million genies. That's very clever. Yeah. I first heard that a couple of years ago. When did you hear that, Michael?
Oh, I couldn't even tell you.
Whoever came up with that was very clever.
I'm sure I saw it on 9gag or XKCD.
Oh, yeah.
But what if the genie takes it very literally and just gives him the bottles, but there are no genies in it?
Well, the actual joke is I wish for 1 million genies.
Yeah. It's very good. It's very, very good. And Douglas Hofstadter in that book, Go to Leisure-Bach, that we might have even talked about, has a lot about this sort of paradox. And I think it sidesteps his meta problem there, the Bertrand Russell problem, with this other solution. So it's actually quite a brilliant solution. I'm not sure if it does or not. I have to think about that. Okay, so are there any more questions or things people want to ask before we do a little private reduced size class on bits and of security and knowledge? Okay, all right. So I'm going to walk downstairs and get a glass of water because my throat's about to explode. And then I'll come back and it'll take me 2 or 3 minutes. So you're absolutely fine to just go away if you don't want to be here. Don't feel any obligation to stay. And what time is it now? It's 20 to 8. We'll make sure we finish by 8. Okay, right. See you
Catch you,
soon.
Richard.
Bye.
Nice one, not Richard Buckland. Right, I gotta go write reports for work. Catch you all. Congrats on making it to this part of the course. Bye.
Thank you, Panda. Thank you.
Thanks, Panda.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks.
Panda.
Yeah, Trash Panda.
Real Panda.
I love this. Nobody said bye to Richard, but everybody's saying bye to Panda.
Well, Panda's not. Panda's
He's coming back. Yeah.
Wait, what's happening now after Richard gets back?
He will explain bits of security.
Oh, cool.
Very short revision.
Brandon, can you hit the link up for the... Oh, sorry. Can you hit the link up for the notes again? I just closed it by accident.
That's all good. So we have 2 things now. I think Jazz put one up for... You know, I actually just need to get it up. Oh, Jazz, can you put up the link?
Yes, I'll put my one up in. Yep.
Also, did we ever figure out what the deal with the Facebook thing was? Like, should I add someone on Facebook to get you added, or is it a full group?
So it isn't a group. I said group accidentally. It's actually just a group chat.
Your same deal. Is it full, or is there
It's not full, but there isn't a specific link. It's like, oh, give me your Facebook and I'll invite you personally. It's hard
if that's your real name, I'll hunt you down on Facebook and send you a message.
Hunt is a very
Game on.
word.
If your name is Brandon Green, like.
Econ time.
Is that a group of Comp 6441?
I think it's both. 6-4
Yeah,
and 6-8.
it's both. If anyone hasn't been added to it and wants to be added to it, I'll leave my name in the chat. You can add me on Facebook and I'll add you. I think I'm the admin for it.
Okay,
you are.
Yeah, cool. I'm gonna jump out, but see you all. Add me on Facebook. I'll just assume anyone who adds me in the next half hour wants to get added to the chat. So, bye.
See ya.
So did he say what did he say? What did Tom say?
He said that if you add him on Facebook in the next half hour, he'll assume you want to be added to the chat for this course.
I don't know what's his ID.
He put his name in. He I found one Tom.
He linked his Facebook.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I see.
Now the question is, how well do you remember his face? Or his other details?
Are you guys helping someone?
Tom just added his Facebook to the chat, so if anyone wants to get added to the security chat on Facebook.
Ah, cool.
Yeah, I think that's him.
Good. I think you guys talking with each other is excellent. I really like it. And connect in as many ways as you can. It's really good. So we were going to talk about bits of security and bits of information. Can I just say one other thing? I don't know if I talked at all about honesty. I'm just assuming everyone's honest. So everyone thinks I'm a bit crazy to do that, but I actually sort of suspect everyone is honest at their heart, and everyone can be tempted, and we're all weak. But I think at their heart, everyone wants to be honest. And I think hopefully everyone doing this course is doing it because they just want to do well. So I'm really not going to police things very much at all. But if anyone does cheat, I should say, I have to warn you, the uni is quite, I'm not saying this to deter you from cheating, because I think the only way to deter you from cheating is you to decide you don't want to cheat. But just be really careful. It's a bit like crypto and crime, or cyber and crime. The penalties are erratic and weird, and sometimes seeming to me very disproportionate to the whole thing, because the uni just hates it completely. Oh, as do I, of course, but sometimes and that's why before, when people were joking about the COVID Trace app, that is so frightening. Whenever anyone asks me about that, I'm actually really nervous about what I say, because the government really wants it to work and they really want it to happen. And the government, like all governments, is very angry with anyone that stands between them and what they want to do. So you would be a brave person to ever make fun of Anzac Day, or to ever suggest that the COVID Trace app wasn't a good thing to have. It's just very scary.
There's no constitutional free speech in Australia.
No, I mean, we've got a whole range of challenges. That, the reason I'm saying all this is, if you even just joked around with this app, I think you would find that politicians and police and everyone and judges would just react incredibly strongly. It is just like not a thing. So someone sent a little joke SMS to someone, that person, if the police find them, and the police will put as much resources behind finding them as they do behind anything, I'm sure, is in so much trouble. Just, it's not a thing to joke about, because you just got to know your timing. And I always get that wrong, say things a bit too soon. But so yeah, please don't cheat at a uni ever, and please don't be very careful what you say or do about the COVID app. That would be my advice. I mean, or do good things and be a good person, but just be very, very careful. Just know the stakes are very high with this.
There was something I wanted to share, to you about COVID app, about like privacy issues. Maybe later after you.
Okay, sure. So here we go. So we've got, 61 people. That's still a lot of people that want to do bits of security. So bits of security, bits of information. What are they got in common? Bits of. So why the heck are we saying bits of? Already it sounds stressful when you start saying bits of in front of anything, because you don't normally start sentences with bits of. So when we say bits of, we really mean we're working in base 2, and we're not interested in the actual number we're getting. We're interested in how many digits it has, or how many bits it has. So both of those things are a bit weird. So let's just disentangle them a little bit. We could just as easily work in base 10. So imagine we're working in base 10. Base 2 has some technical advantages that I'm sure once you understand everything else, it'll become obvious to you. Oh yeah, base 2 is better than base 10. But at the moment, let's just imagine we're in base 10. So the question really is, why, when we're talking about numbers, are we suddenly talking about how many digits are in the number rather than talking about the number itself? What would on earth be the point of doing that? And I reckon once you start thinking of that, you probably know the answer already, which is, okay. What? Say it.
Size.
Size, that's right. When numbers are growing, when you're interested in growth, and when you're interested in numbers that are very big, we normally are more interested in the magnitude of the number than the actual value of the number for big numbers. So when I want to know how far away is the sun, I don't really want to know within the nearest inch. In fact, we'd call that in finance spurious accuracy. It'd be more accurate, but it's spurious. Who the hell cares? Spurious accuracy is actually worse. You miss, because you're missing the wood for the trees. So we just want to know, well, the sun is roughly, and now I'm thinking about it, I don't really know. I know the moon's about 250,000 kilometers away. How far away is the sun? It's like 40 times that. What would it be, 10 million kilometers? I'm making that up. Does anyone know? But I'm guessing it's the order of 10 million kilometers. Someone look it up. Let's find out.
What are we looking up?
How far away the sun is from the Earth.
It's 8 minutes.
150 million kilometers, I think.
150. And did I say 10? So I was out by an order of magnitude. So I was 1 digit wrong. So that's the size of my error. And it could have been much worse. I could have said, say again?
150 million on average.
150. So I was out by a factor of 15. So it could have been much worse. I could have thought it was just a few kilometers away, like someone I was speaking to, a friend of mine actually, and we were talking about the moon, and they said, isn't it just like a couple of kilometers just straight up? So they're out by a factor of 250,000. That's a bigger amount to be out by. It's more or less important to know the magnitude of how far away it is than the actual number. I hope that's making sense. So you can do rougher calculations and rough approximations. And never has that been more apparent now than we're in the time of COVID, where, you know, we've suddenly got all these massive numbers appearing and everyone's starting to use logarithmic scales now, because that's how we can see how these really big numbers are and how we can express them and talk about them meaningfully. And when they're small, they're meaningful, but even when they're big, they're still meaningful because we're taking logs. And why are we saying logs? Well, logs is when you start counting how many digits there are rather than what the digits are. That's what a log of something is. It's telling you how many digits there are. So log to the base 10 is telling you how many digits there are when you write the thing in normal numbers. And log to the base 2 is telling you how many digits there are when you write it in binary. So those scales on the side of the COVID things are all log scales. Okay, so when you're dealing with big numbers or numbers that are growing, or you need to have things where you both want to talk about big and small numbers together, logs are a sensible way of doing it. So when we say bits of this or that, what we're really saying is, I'm now about to talk about some things that could get to be very big. And I don't really precisely care how big they are. What's important to us is that we get the ballpark right. So we're going to talk about how many digits it takes to represent them, and that's good enough for us. Now, why do we use digits in base 2 rather than base 10? Does anyone want to have a guess?
We're comp sci students.
We're comp sci. Yeah, that's right. But Brandon, why does comp sci like to do everything in base 2 rather than base 10? I mean,
computers do.
There's electric. So computers do in terms of representing logic. So binary logic's convenient to represent, and 2-valued signals are easier to represent in electronics in the old days and less error prone than multi-valued signals. So some computers were made with multi-valued signals. But why is our storage 2-valued? Why is our programming abstraction 2-valued? The convenient thing.
Think of things in terms of yes and no.
Yeah, physically storing that in terms of I don't know, voltage.
Yes.
Low voltage.
Yes. Actually, you know what? I'm going to be a real meanie. I'm not going to answer that question. So it's a question that I wondered about for a long time in my life. Why are we so obsessed with base 2? And certainly all the reasons you're giving are part of the answer. There's like reasons for how the whole computer's evolved and historical reasons. The first time I really understood it I read a really interesting book by an Indian theoretical computer scientist that I just found in a secondhand bookstore, and he was introducing information theory and he was explaining it. And it was the first time anyone had ever clearly made me realize, oh, that's of course base 2 is so much better than base 10. Oh, it makes sense. And it made me really happy. So let me leave that as a puzzle for you, and maybe one day you'll be in a secondhand bookshop seeing crazy.
There's 2 buttons on your mouse. So you can have left click or right click. Oh, what?
I don't know about
Then there's
that.
also click down and click up.
Mind blown. Apple mouse, what is this?
No button.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 plus a scroll wheel.
Well, it's like, why do we have base 10? Because they got 10 fingers, so you can count nicely. But
That's right. Yeah, base 10 is just an accident of evolution, and you know, 10's a fairly unfortunate number. If you could just think about any other base, it'd be better. Having only 2.
Base 12 would be better. Base 60 would be the best.
60 would be amazing. That's right. And the Babylonians, lots of empires.
Babylonians got it right, and then some American came along and screwed it up.
base imperial, yeah.
So yeah, that's right. So so it is both convenient physically and also convenient conceptually to use base 2. But let's not worry about it. Let's just say we're using base 2 and we're going to measure things that can be very big that we're interested in base 2. And we're going to measure them not by the actual value of them. We're just going to count the number of bits. So from now on, I'm just going to talk about bits. And when I say bits, I mean how many digits does it have when you turn this number into base 2. So if I say, oh, that's 10 bits, what I'm really saying is that's a number that's about 1,000, because 2 to the 10 is 1,000. So to deal with this sort of thing now, because we're using base 2 and numbers of digits, this is one of the technical things you have to know in this course. You have to be able to raise things to powers of 2 quite quickly. You have to know that 2 to the 10 is 1,000, 2 to the 20 is 1,000,000, 2 to the 30 is 1,000,000,000. You just have, you know, because that'll help you sanity check answers and do mental calc. So I would just practice doing that. Practice your doubling numbers until you get to 10. And I'm sure I told you the joke about being drunk and doubling. Did I tell you that? No, it was very funny. But I'll tell you that another time, because I promise we'll be finished by 8, and that's 10 minutes away. Okay, so we now know why we're using bits. So what things can we measure? Well, there's two things. And in this course, I started by measuring information because I thought that was simpler. And then I went on to measure bits of security, which I thought was more complex. And often in the past, we've taught the two things intermingled together, but I tried to separate them out this time. I don't think I did such a good job, but I'm heading in the right direction. I reckon I'll get a pen next year. So bits of information is answering the question, how much information is there in something? Now, there's quite a few exercises on this and information about Claude Shannon, the founder of thinking about this, which we call information theory, an amazing man. We love you, Claude Shannon, such a thinker. And it's well worth your time to find out a bit about him and about the field, because information theory, as it's called, ignore all the fancy stuff. It's just the general ideas about it are so useful in everyday life as a computer scientist, algorist, and computer engineer. So he was really just interested in how much information does it take to store something. So this is, imagine before computers, I have a poem and I want to send it to you by telegram and I have to pay per letter. So now there's sort of, it's both a financial and a philosophical question. How cheaply can I send this poem and you still at the other end be able to get the poem? And you could start eroding bits, couldn't you? You could pull all the vowels out and you could probably still get the poem. Maybe you could pull out the spaces between the words as well, although that's sounding slightly scary now if you don't have the vowels.
You could compress the poem?
Yeah, maybe you've learned a compression algorithm and you could run it through a compression algorithm.
Middle out compression?
Beg your pardon?
Middle out compression.
Middle out compression, yeah, well, or whatever, but somehow you would do compression.
Letters cost, but do numbers and symbols.
See, that's hard. But let's suppose let's suppose we can't cheat the system. Let's answer the question. Suppose they've got the perfect system. Suppose your adversary is yourself.
You could save 38% by bringing everything down to 5 bits, which would be enough to encode 26 letters, or 32 technically, assuming you didn't need capitals.
Yep. Yeah, you could UUE encode it. Is that what you're sort of saying? UU encode it?
What I'm saying is that because ASCII is 8 bits, but you only have 26 lowercase letters.
Oh, yeah. But it's a telegram, so yeah. But yeah, if it wasn't a telegram, if you were sending literal bits to the other person, what's the smallest number of bits you could send? Which is the next question. That's right. So you're one step ahead of me. But the telegram question, I pose it just so you just start thinking, well, I could compress this, but you'd realize at some point you can't compress anymore. Like obviously you can't just send one letter and they get the whole poem back if they've not seen it before. Assume there's no shared secrets. There's no other channels by which we can communicate. Of course, there is a shared secret because they know English and they know all sorts of rules about English and so on. And that side channel, them already knowing English and rules about English, that lets them put the vowels back in, that side channel, we sometimes call a lack of entropy in English, that somehow there's structure and information to English that both they and we know. So English has redundancy in it that lets us do things like pull out vowels and not throw away the meaning. And so let's not yet go to, let's do your thing, Michael. So suppose we were sending the message over a wire ourselves rather than the telegram and we just had to send bits. What's the smallest number of bits we'd have to send the poem? So now we've got both questions about what letters can we pull out of the poem, but maybe also questions about how can we represent those letters to take up less bits. And absolutely, Michael was right. We could just naively straight away say, well, instead of taking 8 bits to represent each character as you know, traditional computers did, we could represent a character in 5 bits if we don't care about case, and maybe we can infer the case later on because 2 to the 5 is 32. That gives us 26 letters plus a few extras. So now we've got the message that's 5/8 as many bits. And then maybe we can think of something else. We think, oh, we don't even need all 32. So maybe I can compress that a bit more and use 4.5 bits. Or maybe I can do this, or maybe I can do that. How much could you compress the damn thing down? Well, however much you could do it, if you could do that, if you could do it the most you could possibly do, so at the other end someone could expand it, that smallest possible thing we're going to say is like the atom of information. It's the truth. That's the essential bit. We've taken off all the window dressing. We've got the essence of that poem. The essence of that communication is those bits. And we say that is the number of bits of information in that poem. That's the smallest thing you need to represent that poem that someone can work out what it means at the other end. And it's an interesting question, because once you know the number of bits of information in something, it gives you clues about how much you can compress it. Like, what are the physical limits of compression? You can't compress, if you take a picture, you can run a compression algorithm on it. You can't compress it more than the number of bits of information that are in that picture. You take a story and you compress it, you can't compress it more than the number of bits of information that are in that story. If you compress it more than that, we won't be able to reconstruct the story at the other end. And the example I used in class about that, I took it down to a 1-bit example. I don't know if you remember. And I said, this puzzle about Martians and Venetians and things, and you had to make a 2-way choice. How many bits of information do you need to do that? 1 bit lets you make a 2-way choice. And then I said meanly, oh, how can you make a 4-way choice with just one question, one yes, no question? So you got 1 bit. Can you represent a 4-way choice? No, because the answer to a 4-way choice requires 2 bits of information, because you cannot represent 4 different outcomes using only 1 bit. You need 2 bits to represent 4 outcomes. So we, starting from the smallest thing, we can come up with a limit. We say a yes, no question, that takes 1 bit. A 4-way question, that takes 2 bits. We know that. It's not physically possible to go smaller than that. And then when we look at a big whole poem, we know, well, if the whole poem is 1K, when I look at it in a text file, 1,000 bits long, then I know the poem must at least, can't have more than 1,000 bits of information in it, because I've represented it perfectly in this text file. But I reckon I can compress it and pull letters out and remove space and do all sorts of things, get it small. So we can start to have upper and lower limits for how much information's in the poem, but it's still sort of debatable. We can't really work it out other than proving we can compress it further and someone can still get it out at the end, or proving for theoretical reasons that we can come up with, like, well, there's 4 possible outcomes and that's not possible to encode in 1 bit. We can come up with limits from below, but maybe you don't even know how much information is in something. And then we did that exercise that Gaurav was asking about, where we were trying to estimate how much information was in English. So we had a sentence that was, I don't know, 20 or 30 characters long. We wondered how many bits of information were in that sentence. So we went through and someone was trying to guess the next letter. And whenever they got the letter right...
That was me, and it was brutal.
Yeah, but you were really good. And you were able, I think, Oliver, to knock out about half the letters. Is that right?
Well, I couldn't do it in my head. When we turned around and used the chalkboard, I think got most of the way through with some help from the crowd.
Yeah.
It was about 50% in the end.
I think it was about 50%. So what we found was 50% of the letters, let's not worry about how we encode them even yet, 50% of the letters aren't even needed. And then how many bits of information are in each letter, that's a separate question that we haven't looked at. So we started to see the amount of information in that sentence was less than you'd naively think. And I think I might have mentioned the stats that most analysis that people have done suggests that typical English text, there's only slightly more than 1 bit of information per letter. So if you've got 1,000 letters in 1,000 letters in a poem, you can probably represent it with, somewhere between 1,000 and less than 2,000 bits, which is remarkable, which means you can come up with something that I could give to you. I could come up with something that I give to you that you could uncompress and you'd get the original poem back that had less than 2,000 bits in it. So that's bits of information. So what are the important things to know about that? The idea of it, and then how to work out those upper and lower limits. And the lower limits are by reasoning, counting how many things it has to distinguish between. So if it has to distinguish, I'm going to send you a number between 1 and 1,000. How many bits do I have to send you so you can work out what that number is? I have to send you 10 bits of information. If I sent you less than 10 bits of information, then there's too many numbers for you to be able to distinguish. If we went and brute force the whole damn thing, if I sent you these bits, it means this number. If I sent you this pattern of bits, it means this number. If I sent you this pattern of bits, it means this number. How many different patterns of bits can we get out of saying, if I sent you 9 bits? Well, we can only find 2 to the 9 patterns of numbers, which is what, 512. So there's only, if I did that table, this combination of bits means this number, this combination of bits means this number, that table would only have 512 lines in it. So there's no way we could represent every possible number. So just by a counting argument, we can work out, there must be more than 9 bits of information. Does that make sense? The second thing is bits of security. But before I talk about that, can I check bits of information's okay? And we did a very hard question on it in the sample exam today, where I asked you to think about how many bits of information might be in a photograph. And we then just started to try and do the reasoning from above and below. We started saying, well, I reckon a photograph of that quality probably couldn't distinguish every person in the world. So probably it's not got the distinguishing ability to distinguish between 4 billion people. 4 billion people, we worked out was about 32 bits. So there's less than 32 bits of useful information in it, we started to think. And then how much actually is in it? How, given a photo, how many people could you distinguish between? If I had that sort of grainy photo.
That photograph part, I didn't quite understand. Is it like we get the resolution of the small parts like pixel and then calculate the number of pixels in there?
Well, so the number of pixels would give you an upper limit on how much information's in there. But there'll be all this redundancy. So given some pixels, you could guess what other pixels were. I bet I could cover bits of, say if we looked at Adam Smallhorn's, Adam, can you just turn off your camera just for a sec? I want to see that picture of you in a tie. It always makes me happy. That is such a cheesy photo. So can you see, looking at Adam's picture, suppose literally, that's what I was looking, not literally his picture, but they're the images I was looking at when I was talking about how much information was in a picture. I was thinking of a picture of that size and that quality. So how much information is in that picture? Well, can you see that you could cover up bits of it and you could work out what they were? You could cover up bits of his white or his blue. So for example, on my screen, his name cuts across that picture and obscures a fair bit of it, but actually I can deduce more or less everything that's under that name. So there's redundancy in that picture. So although that picture might to store take 50K, so 50,000 bits, I don't believe there's 50,000 bits of information in there, because I reckon we can start throwing bits away, and I'm still getting the same amount of information. And if I wanted to identify him, if I was saying how much information is in this photo of someone's face so I can identify them from a database, well, I don't need to know about the trees. I don't need to know about his jacket. I can throw all that away. So now it's much smaller. And then I can start to infer things. Once I know a few of his skin color pixels, I probably don't need the other ones. Once I know a few of the pixels about his glasses, I probably don't need the rest. There's all, just by whittling down and using common sense reasoning, I can start to work out, and I've got to distinguish him from other people in different lighting conditions, and he might have different hair, and he might wear a wig or something. So probably I'm now wondering, what am I actually going to distinguish him on? Probably based on his ear size and his nose size and shape and his eye gap between his eyes and the size of his mouth. And then I think, well, okay, how many different sizes of ears are there? How many bits of information does that give me? How many different sizes, how many different shapes and sizes of nose are there? Maybe there's 50 different noses. I don't know. So if I know his nose shape, I've got one of 50 things. And I think, well, that's about 5-6 bits of information, 50. And then his eye gap. I mean, what are the eye gaps on people compared to the head width gap? Maybe that's a ratio that's got this many bits. Do you see what I'm doing? So you could start to, by parts, by different items, you could work out how much information's in each different items and start to assemble up saying how much information you can get out of it. Or you can whittle down saying, oh, this is redundant, I can throw it away. And at the end of the day, you might decide in his picture there, you might decide there's more than 32 bits of information. And if you decide that and you're Facebook, then suddenly you're happy because you think, well, then theoretically, with images like this, I can identify anyone in the world because that's enough to get everyone in the world. So suddenly you're quite excited. Or you might decide there's only really 20 bits of useful information in his face, in which case you realize, I can only identify between 1 million people. So maybe I can spot someone in an airport. If I know the people in the airport, I can work out who's who, but I can't see a random stranger and work out who they are.
So coming up with that number, numeric value, like that part I got a little confused about, like how did you come up with 32-bit or something like that?
Oh, well, I'm not saying how many bits there are. I would do it by saying, what are the features of his face and how much reasonably do I think I could extract from those features? So, I mean, how many different head shapes are there? I can get his head shape. I don't know, maybe there's, I don't know, does anyone do drawing? Are there 20 head shapes, 6 head shapes?
So for example, like in case of like, if somebody sees a criminal and there are like sketch artists coming up and
yes,
those things like what color the hair was, this, and so those are the bits of information.
That's a really good way of articulating and describing it. You could be like an identikit artist and you could assemble his face from descriptions. How much description would you need to be able to draw that face? So someone could draw that face and recognize. That's a really clever way of doing it. And you might think of other ways of doing it. It doesn't really matter how you think of doing it, though I like that one the most. And then that's what you'd write down. You'd say, gee, how can I measure how much information's in his face? I guess how much information to communicate that face? How could I communicate a face verbally? I guess I could be communicating it to a police sketch artist. Well, how would I tell them how to draw that face? I'd say use nose type 7. How many noses are there? And you don't have to know the answer to that. You can say, I'm guessing there's 10 different sorts of noses. There you go. I'm accepting that as a marker now. All right, you said 10. That sounds plausible. Or you might say, I'm an artist. I happen to know there's 50 types of noses. Or an artist and I happen to know really, although we talk about noses a lot, most people only have 4 or 5. So whatever it is, you'd pick a number and then you'd say, I'm interested in eye spacing and eye color. And you might say, I'm not going to pay attention to hair color because in the context of this particular question, we're looking for people trying to disguise themselves. So I guess the first thing they'll do is dye their hair. So I'm going to drop that out. Or they might part their hair differently, or I might need to track people over time and their hair might go gray. So it doesn't matter what assumptions you make. You've just got to mount some sort of argument that you are thinking carefully about how much you've learned from having hold of his photo. Once I've got his photo, how much information has my computer learned that will help it identify people in whatever the context is of that particular question? And I'm guessing you're going to come up with a number. I'm thinking you'd be lucky to get 32, but Facebook seems to be able, I don't know how good Facebook is because I don't use Facebook, but people tell me they can identify people from pictures now. I'm assuming they've got things to help them, like they know who they're in photos with and they know a connection diagram of people. So it's sort of like, oh, I know there's someone in the airport. I know there's someone with 1 or 2 degrees of freedom away from Adam Smallhorn. Who's the person that looks most like that? Is that right? Or can I just give Facebook a random arbitrary photo randomly, not connected to any other human or geographic information, and will they work out who it is? Does anyone know?
But it tags my brother all the time.
Say again?
It tags my brother with my name all the time.
With your name? Oh, yeah. So they might, yeah. So there we go. So now you start to know, okay, they're not actually, yeah. So that's a counterexample. It doesn't mean it's not possible. It means I haven't been able to do it. Someone was going to say, does anyone know?
I was just say it's interesting. There are some projects about missing persons, which is, I think you upload photos of this missing person and it can automatically trigger, oh, is that Joe Bloggs? So almost if you're a missing person for your anonymity, it's reversing your privacy, but it's actually an initiative they're using to find these people that have been gone for 10 years.
Wow. Can you put a link to that, Adam, or anything you know about it?
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking that'd be great for OSINT as well.
Yeah.
And there are some projects that use data in this way. And now I'm thinking about it, government projects. So, yeah, so that's the $1 million question. Can Facebook do it that well? I'm suspecting they can't, and I'm suspecting they probably haven't managed to get 32 good bits of information from a face yet, but maybe they have. Maybe they have. But I'm suspecting the number would be less than that. But yeah, do a reasonableness check and come up with what you think the number must be.
Their entire population, haven't they?
Say again?
China's managed to do facial recognition against their entire population, haven't they?
So we don't know. Because remember, it's like this entropy thing. Are they able to spot anyone anywhere, or do they know these people are all in this town and it's a smaller problem? Given this face and the likely area this person's in, I can work it out. Or can they take any face and find them if they're anywhere? That possibly, that's a much harder problem. It's not clear to me that they can do that. And it's also, of course, we never really know, because there's a whole range of filters over information. It's hard to know literally what the errors are, because you can be in trouble for reporting errors, perhaps. And then perhaps even if they're reported, perhaps essentially that doesn't want to be distributed to the world. So it's hard to know what their error rate is, and that's important to know.
So according to a 2014 statistic posted by Facebook, in a 2-option facial recognition test, its online system scored an accuracy of 97.25% compared to a human benchmark of 97.5%.
So a 2-option is you are given you're trained on 2, and then you're given a new, you're saying, here's a photo of person A, here's a photo of person B, here's a new mystery photo that's either A or B, which is it? and they can distinguish between the two?
I'm not 100% sure to answer that.
I suspect that's it. And so that's a little bit harder to work out the bits of information in the photo there. Though it's a good comparison with our ability to detect it. But it's still not telling the number of bits of information we need to know, not their ability to distinguish between two, but their ability to distinguish between, bazillions. And maybe you can mount a proxy argument to get there. Maybe you can say, oh, well, this shows that on a two-way test, they're as good as people. And if they're as good as people on a two-way test, then maybe in general, they're as good as people. And so maybe if we know how good people are at identifying people from looking at people's faces, we could infer that Facebook's programs were as good as that. And you could mount that argument.
To take a stab at it without really knowing the space, my assumption would be that in a front-on neutral expression, computers would be very good because they're dealing with a similar image each time. Whereas if you were looking at varying expressions, smiles, facial hair, or different angles, I think their accuracy would drop off very rapidly.
Yes, and that's a really good observation you just made there, which is you then need to know the context. So are we trying to identify people, are we trying to identify a photo from a photo, or are we trying to identify a human from a photo where the human's doing different angles? In which case, then the question we have to ask is what's invariant? What doesn't change when the camera angle changes? What doesn't change when your expression changes? What doesn't change when your hair's dye? And that's why I was talking about things like eye distance presumably don't change. I've heard that a lot of the facial recognitions used by governments at the moment are very focused on eyebrow shape. It turns out from the way they're trained. So, perhaps one way of defeating them if you wanted to is to shave your eyebrows off. Or have different eyebrows. But, this sort of thing is interesting. What are they resuming as invariant? What can you change and get away with? Because the things that you can change are the redundant things that you pull out. And it's only the invariants that are the information you're transmitting. But also, when you were saying a reasonableness thing there, I really love reasonableness. And that's what we have to do all the time is computing. But notice for bits of information questions, that wouldn't be a good answer. I mean, the rest of your answer would be good, but saying reasonably, I reckon, that is, a bits of information is one of those few questions where we actually want you to do calculations. And rather than relying on your gut instincts, which 99% of the time are going to be fantastic, in bits of information questions, sometimes you get surprise results where your instincts aren't good. And we sort of want to be able to calculate and prove. So if you see a bits of information question, make sure you show your reasoning and put numbers on all the steps and combine numbers in some way. Don't rely on your intuition, no matter how normally good it is, because that's not the shape of that sort of question. But yeah, Michael, you're absolutely right. What's invariant, what's not, is a key thing to understand before you can answer that question. So does everyone understand the bits of information sort of idea? It's really how much would I have to say to transmit a concept from me to you? And that concept could be a human identity from a photo, or a human from if I wanted you to construct a key to unlock my door, how many words would I have to say? How much information would I have to tell you so you could make a copy of the key without seeing a picture of the key? If I wanted to describe a fugitive over the phone to headquarters, how much would I have to say without showing you a photo or giving you that actual person? So I've transmitted the concept of that person. And then that concept takes that amount of information we're saying. And of course, the danger here is you can often find ways you could transmit that concept, but you don't necessarily know you found the best way of doing it. Maybe it could be compressed more. You can always send the poem in plain text, but so that's an upper limit on how much information's in there, but maybe you could compress it more. Maybe you could take the vowels out. Maybe you could do this. So you never know if you can do it better. All right. That was a very long answer about bits of information. Is it now clearer to the 50 people remaining? Or as I like to say, the 6 bits of people information remaining?
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Brandon. All right. Then now let's talk about bits of security. And actually, that's so much easier because the only thing that's hard about bits of security is the bits of bit that I think we've already knocked over. When you want to talk about how much security you have in cryptographic terms, it's very simple. We just have one currency, and that's time. Because we know everything can, except one-time pads, everything can be broken because there's normally not a lot of entropy around. So you can recognize You can brute force all combinations, and the lack of entropy means when you find the right one, there's a bing and it stands out and it looks different to the rest. If there's too much entropy around, then you can't detect the right one when you see it, because all things are equally likely, and that's the thing that one-time pads exploit. You could try all possible keys to decode a one-time pad, but you'll never know when you have decoded it, though one of the decodings will be correct, because lots of the wrong ones will also look plausible. If it's 100 characters long, the message you're trying to decode, then all legitimate English sentences that involve 100 letters will come out of the decoding with different keys at different times. So you won't know which of those is the right one. And you won't know any more than you did at the start, which is the message is 100 characters long. So, but if there's enough entropy around that when you see the right answer, it goes bing and you got it, then all you've got to do to crack a message is brute force it. And then the question is, well, how can I brute force it quickly? I can either go over all possible keys, if a key is integral in brute forcing, or I can go over all possible plain texts and I can re-encode them if I know the encoding method and see if it matches the ciphertext. So for example, with a hash function, I could just hash everything until I get a collision and see when it matches, or whatever. Somehow I just try all combinations, whatever that means in the context of the particular question, and eventually I'll stumble across the right one. And so security 99% of the time relies on having the number of combinations you have to try to be really, really big. Now, the two things to notice are, one, I've already said, there has to be enough entropy lack that when you see the right answer, you know you got it. And two is, just because it takes a long time to brute force it, you can't ever say, and so that's the best, that's how long it's going to take a hacker to find it, an attacker to find it, because maybe there are faster ways in brute forcing it. So when we talk about bits of security, we're normally giving an upper bound. We're saying, well, it's not going to take them any longer than this. They'll be able to do it in this amount of time, ... The thing we don't usually say is, and of course they might be able to do it much, much faster if they can think of another clever, different attack to take out. So if they're doing a brute force attack and they're trying all combinations, then however many combinations they have to try, we write that number in base 2, we count the number of digits in it, and that is called the bits. That's the bits of work they have to do to solve it. And we say the bits of security is the bits of work. How much time does it take to solve it? That's bits of security. Well, we say it's the same as how much work do they have to do. Now, the thing that can vary here is if they have to do a certain amount of work, but they have more powerful computers, they can do the work a bit quicker. So often when we're talking about bits of security, we both have to think of the size of the space they have to brute force over, and we also have to think how much compute power they have at their power. So how many things can they do per second? And we only have to be roughly about it. Maybe they're on a home device, maybe they can do 1 billion things per second. Most home computers with multiple cores can do several billion things a second. And each core, in theory, could be doing maybe 1 or 2 things a second. You could have 16 cores. So maybe you go, oh, I can do 20 things a second. But then you have to remember, well, those things are executing a line of machine code. It takes many lines of machine code to do one useful thing in the world. So, you know, maybe we're being a bit too optimistic when we say a home computer can do 1 billion things a second. If a thing is trying out a hash or encoding a message, it might take them actually a fair bit of work to even do one. With bits of security, because remember, we normally, depending on the context, think of the upper bound, it's normally okay to be conservative one way or the other. So if you're trying to design a code, hello, oh, everyone's going, see you, everyone. If you're trying to design a code and you don't want someone to break it, then you want to make sure that even if you take pessimistic assumptions, even if you give them more power than they really have, they still can't do it. And then you can relax because you've been so pessimistic in your assumptions that the real world's probably much better than that. So often we don't care about that. We say, oh, I reckon they can do 1 billion things a second. And then someone will say, well, they can't really do that. And you go, well, okay, I've assumed they're more super powerful than they are. So if my assumed adversary who's super powerful can't solve it, then your real world adversary can. And the nice thing about that is you're not then really critically depending on getting things wrong. You can't, you know, what if you accidentally think, they can't possibly do that, and they get a computer that can. So I quite always like having a little margin of error. And then, of course, they probably won't be using a home computer. They can use multiple computers. They can go on Amazon and rent computers. They can use supercomputers, blah, 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 blah. And a good measure for how much compute power is available in the world is these days, I reckon, look at Bitcoin mining. So just see how many operations Bitcoin miners can do. And that gives you a good indication for someone with a bloody lot of compute power, how much they can do. And if a Bitcoin miner can't solve it in 10 years, then let's just assume that it can't be solved in 10 years by someone less than the NSA.
Folding at home.
Yeah, folding at home. That's right. SETI at home. All those things are awesome. I don't know if they can do more than Bitcoin miners can, though. Can they? I have a funny feeling they do less.
A month ago, let's say, the Folding at Home team had 7 times, as it was more than the top 7 supercomputers combined worth of compute power available.
That,
but that was a while ago. I don't know what that looks like now.
Sorry, someone else was saying something.
I think there was a big uptake following Corona.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, there was. There was a huge, and a number of big YouTube channels sponsored it and went after it.
Oh, that's awesome.
What at home? Did you say? What at home?
Folding at home. Oh, it's a way of crowdsourcing compute power. So everyone can load a little app in the background that uses the idle cycles on your computer to brute force really important problems for the world. In the old days, initially it was for finding extraterrestrials, so analyzing signals that NASA couldn't analyze to see if you could find patterns of intelligence.
Now it's used for folding proteins, which is what's called folding at home.
That's right. That's right. Ways of folding proteins, because that can be good for us in so many different ways. Does anyone know, was that compared with, because even if you're bigger than the 7 biggest supercomputers, in a way, supercomputers have, I think, almost had their days. It might be that the biggest Bitcoin miners have more power than the 7 biggest supercomputers put together. Do we know that, or we don't know that yet? So, but anyway.
It wasn't a number that came up in the articles I was reading, but yeah, I don't know. Do they publish those kind of numbers? Like some dude in China, does he actually tell the world how much he has?
You can work it out by how quickly they solve the puzzles. Sorry, Michael, what were you going to say?
I haven't read this article yet, so don't quote me on it, but it says that not even the top 500 supercomputers combined are more powerful than the Bitcoin network.
Yeah. The Bitcoin network's so big because it's got money driving it.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of games and stuff that people distribute freely, and while you run it in your machine, in your PS4, it actually ends up using your computing power to mine the Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's right. And lots of
money. So, Sequoia, one of the fastest supercomputers in the world, is capable of processing 16.3 petaflops per second. The estimated combined Bitcoin processing power of the world has exceeded 1 exaflop.
That's so cool. What a crazy world we live in. What a crazy world. We're saying this is the profit motive. It scales. It just scales. So that's right. People do what's in their interest. That's just human nature. You can't stand in the way of that. It's like standing in the way of one of those dams that's given way, like the Mulholland Dam. Okay, so yeah, that's a good estimate. So have we talked about bits of security enough now? Does that make sense to people? If you're answering a bits of security question, we don't want your gut feeling about something. We want a series of numbers combined together in a rational argument. So you'd say, I'm going to assume the attacker has this sort of compute power and can do this many bits of work per second. I'm going to assume this. I'm going to assume that. I have to do this many things. Put all that together, blah, 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 blah. Oh, it'll take a year to do this. And I don't want you just jumping straight to that, saying, I reckon this can't be done or it'll take forever. I actually want an argument built up from the bottom that ends up with a number, and it's a rational argument that leads to a rational number. It doesn't have to be the same as my number. I just want to check that your steps are making sense, because you can always get better at estimating each individual step. And I can certainly make mistakes like I did putting the sun 15 times closer than it should be. No, I'm responsible for more global warming than most people. And you can make mistakes, but they're fixable. But what isn't fixable is learning how to do the actual damn process. So if I can see you can do the process, then I'm a happy, happy man. And that is bits of security and bits of work. What do you reckon? Are we done?
I think so.
Woohoo! And like I promised, it's before 8 o'clock. I just didn't say which day. Sorry, guys. Okay. Well, good luck to you.
Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, real pleasure. You're all going to be great. Ask lots of questions on the exam page. I'll be heads down writing the exam, but I will be surfacing from time to time looking for questions and answering them. And once it's written, I'll be able to sit there answering questions all day long very happily.
Nice.
See you all.
Thanks, Richard.
See you guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Richard.
Thanks, Richard.
See you, Michael. See you, Rick.
Thanks, Richard.
See you, Adam.
Bye.
Thank you.
Not Rick. It's I've forgotten your name.
Ankit. There you
Say
go.
it again.
It's Ankit.
Ankit. That's right. Yeah. I'm not very good. So I hope you're okay. You're okay. You looked a bit worried at a few times. You think it's going to be all right?
That'll be okay.
All right. Ask questions if I can help you with it. It's not too late to learn stuff now if there's been gaps. You've got heaps of time.
Yep.
Ask questions on the exam page and I'll help you, and so will everyone else.
Okay, we'll do.
Okay. See you, Lisa.
Thank you. Bye.
Gayatri, you came out really well tonight, didn't you? She looked really good. I kept saying she was smart and could solve all these problems.
Yeah.
It was entirely hypothetical.
Brief moment of confidence, yeah.
And Adam, I made you turn your picture off. I'm really sorry. But thank you for doing that. And it was lovely having you. And I'm pretty sure you did come top, you know. I could be wrong, but I have this vague feeling you did.
Yeah, I'm shocked. Well, yeah. I don't think I did, but I'm really happy with my...
Yeah. Well, it's nice to know that that's how I think of you anyway.
Thank you.
It hasn't changed. All right. See you, Lachlan. Thanks for all your help. Sorry for if I've given you conniptions, and we'll get together and work out the mechanical details following up from this.
Sounds good. Thanks, Richard.
I heard him say that.
Yeah, we've got that on record, right?
Yeah. It's recording.
So true.
Thanks, Richard.
See you.
Thanks, Richard.
Yeah, see you, Anna. See you, Ryder. See you, Jim. See you, Brendan. See you, Kev. See you. Oh, he's gone. Damn. Okay, Brendan, X, Kev, Flynn, Ryan, Helen, Kev again. Apuva. And how do I pronounce it? Apuva.
Yeah.
Did you have a question or something, or just hang around to say?
No. So you remember I'd come to you after class with a vulnerability in open learning.
Oh, I've forgotten all about it. How did it go? You were going to tell them.
Yeah, but I couldn't find a way to reach out to them, and I just left it there.
Oh, did you ever write it up?
No, I didn't write. I didn't publish it or do anything with it. It's just there.
Why don't you write it up? Because that sounds like Hall of Fame stuff for me. And is Lachlan still here? I'll tell Lachlan. If you write it up and then just write a message telling us what it is. I can't remember what it was. It wasn't a hard one, was it?
I mean, they were giving out the key in the open, and as well as there were a couple of more vulnerabilities which I found out.
Yeah, I think if you can post that, maybe semi-confidentially till we've worked out how to disclose it to them, but enough confidential. Did you mention it in your something in your?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wrote a line that I found a bug, and although you told me not to publish it, I'll be happy to explain it in person.
Can you write a slightly private thing, but do it, because you should get credit for that, because that's so impressive that you did it. And also your responsibility in not disclosing it is really impressive. So write out something about that and make sure, copy it to me and your tutor, maybe even mail us if you don't want to do it publicly. Copy it to your tutor, because I'll help you tell them, because they probably should fix it. But actually it's also really impressive.
All right. Thank you so much.
How's everything else going? Is it all right?
Yeah, I'm just was there for the revision.
Cool. All right. Excellent. All right. Good luck.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
See you.
Thanks, Richard.
See you, Gaurav. Oh, your contributions tonight were fantastic. Thank you very much. And I do like your hydrogen bomb.
Yeah, it's actually reverse of the atom bomb. So people.
That's right. It's very nice.
Yeah. I just wanted to share one issue with COVID safe app.
Yes.
The privacy issue. I think they are Amazon won that. Amazon is building that. And
yes, they contributed to it. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're gonna store it in AWS servers.
Yes.
So there was one idea about in the news they say that you only share your information if you are actually infected. Yeah, once you get infected, and if you go for a checkup, then you'd be sharing your information, whom you interacted with, and that kind of information.
You only share that information if you're infected. Yes.
Yeah, and based on that information, they're gonna call those people, whoever. So that essentially means they are actually keeping a record of all those information, all those people. But I think there is more better with to improve privacy. What we can do is just reveal the key of that particular person, whoever gets infected, and push it to each and every app, and then you'd receive the notification. And
No, that's a design. That's the design that Google and Facebook, Google and Apple are proposing.
Yeah, but this one is kind of different, in which like we have to share our phone number and all
Yeah,
that.
no, that's right. That's right. And it's really weird, that governments around the world like the centralized solution where they get to know the information and tell everyone.
Exactly.
And Google and Apple and us like the decentralized solution where the power's in everyone's own hands. And it's a philosophical difference. And we can all see it's just adding an extra vulnerability. Though the government would argue it's closing off something that might go wrong. Because what if someone, because, you know, we're all irresponsible in their eyes. What if someone doesn't look at their app? It's much better we know about it so we can go around and tell them. And yeah. So, but absolutely, yeah, you put your fingers on the fundamental philosophical difference between their design and ours. And all the privacy stuff that I've seen the government talk about every time is about that piece of information, their upload. And it's very hard to get anyone to talk about the actual database. There's been a little bit about it, the database that identifies everyone. It's been a little bit about it. It's a bit vague. And the keys, of course, are the other thing that's really important to know. Apparently all stored in the same spot.
and the only reason I would be installing the app is because I'm concerned about it, and it's totally voluntary. So that means I would definitely be checking my app if somebody like vulnerable or somebody infected.
Of course.
Came across me.
And it's a really interesting question. I'm really like your analysis of it, and you're spot on. Yep, absolutely spot on.
There's no point in like gathering everyone's phone number.
But you can see why the government want to do it. If you just want to play devil's advocate, they want to do it because that way they know who's been infected, and that way they can answer all sorts of interesting questions that we couldn't answer. So they can say things like, I know that person X and Y and Z have all been infected. Are there any contacts that all of these people have in common? If they're looking for the silent asymptomatic transmitter, the typhoid Mary. So that is information that only comes from knowing collective information rather than individual information. So it is actually more powerful, but at the same time, the price of that extra power is they get to learn an astonishing amount of extra information about people that people seem quite relaxed to give them, but it is very surprising to me. Yep.
Yeah. And I have written briefly in the case study, and I was thinking about writing a little elaborative one.
Yeah.
About like how we can improve privacy in the app.
Perfect. I love everything you're doing. Just keep thinking. At the end of the day, we just have to go with what's best. I suspect we'll all use the app and it will save lives, and that's worth doing. We'll know that it could have been done better, but you can't, what's that phrase? You can't throw away good in search of perfect and have nothing, So, and the good thing is that a lot of people in the community all pushed back a lot on it and forced or encouraged the government to make assurances about privacy in legislation. They're all still promises, and they're backing away from quite a few of them now, but it seems, but maybe it'll appear in legislation, it'll be fine. But I think we'll have some legislative support, which is fantastic. So it could be much worse.
Okay, I'll write that down, and maybe if you could comment on that, like it doesn't handle this kind of scenario or things like that.
Sure. But you have to send me a link, because at the moment I'm so overwhelmed with things.
Yeah, maybe later we can do that after exam as well.
Yeah. But yeah, if you ever want me to comment on anything, just reach out and let me know. But don't assume. Just know that I'm just so busy at the moment. I am dropping lots of contact balls when people are reaching out to me. So just keep trying until you get through. Because the spirit is willing. It's just there's not enough time.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, good luck and well done. I like the way you're approaching everything.
Thank you so much for staying up so late.
Oh no, real pleasure. And look at all these other people that have stayed too. Ryder, Ellen, and Brendan, and how do I pronounce it? Is it Zoo?
Suga. I don't know.
Sue, is it? Suga. Hello, Sue. It's lovely to have you here.
Okay.
And Kung and Ryan and Flynn. Okay,
Thank you.
leave them all asleep. But anyway, see you, grow up.
See you, everyone. Bye-bye. Good luck.
Does anyone have any more questions, or is it all right for me to go? Very happy to answer more questions. I'm thinking they might have all gone already. Might just be me. Anyway, good luck to you all. See you.